What a wonderful part of the world. And when the weather's like this, you kind of think that everything is just how it should be. 188.6 kilometres is our distance today. Goodly part of that has already been eaten up by a breakaway that's got a little bit feisty out there. It's a magnificent place to do a bit of racing, and quite frankly it's the friendliest to the fast men as well, with some of those wearing climbs kind of ironed out just a little bit for this one. You could say the ultimate prep for Flanders itself. Well, we've been here before. It may well be Dwars of Vlaanderen, a relatively young race, but it always produces drama, and in 2023 that was certainly the case. 2023, we had ourselves one heck of a breakaway. There was a couple of incarnations of it, and we were wondering whether this would mean the end of a sprint. Julien Alaphilippe looked lively until his chain got chucked and kind of knocked out one of his hiding in full view surprise attacks. Well, it had a bit of a thinning out, I think it's fair to say. Christophe Laporte, Chase Benoot, Stephen Kung, Madouas was up there, Narvaez, Hermans, Honoré, Nielsen Paulus likewise. And then it just got thinner and thinner upon the ground. We thought that Oya Lozcano and Alexander Kristoff might have a bite. In the end, it was Christophe Laporte that made the jump, and away he went from a very selective group. The mob were busily approaching, and as they started to think about who might make up the podium, with Laporte basically helping himself, then things just started to thin down yet again. Well, the pack were on their case. Laporte had decided that the jump was the best thing for him to do. Christophe was wound in, along with Lozcano. And then, of course, the hopefuls that were thinking about where they might finish, the likes of Jasper Philipsen, etc. Well, they had a little bit more belief, I think it's fair to say. Well, this is a race where, frankly, you've got to be brave, and sometimes the luck of it is just how little regard those around you give you. This was Laporte finally making his jump and heading off up the road, and I don't think anyone trusted him to be able to carry it all the way. Well, after a winning Gent-Wevelgem, they should have been fully aware of his capabilities, and in the end, it was a fantastic gap that he had. Laporte taking it. Lozcano was to head the rest. A selective group of quick men had actually just pulled off at the front of the chasing pack. Lozcano held on. Paulus just managing to keep the field behind him, only just. In fact, given the same time with Jasper Philipsen, who won that field sprint behind, just 15 seconds after Laporte. That's how it finished last year. Van der Poel had won it in 22. Van Baal, Van der Poel also in 2019, and Yves Lampaert in 2018. You can tell from that field that you're looking for punchy riders with a turn of pace, and maybe even somebody who could go extraordinarily long. A time trialist, perhaps. Well, they signed up for duty today, and quite frankly, every single team has got somebody that might have an option today. And I think, essentially, that is the reason why this is such a popular race. Coming as it does, the Wednesday before Flanders, you could say it was great preparation. I'm not sure. Let's see. If somebody wins here, can they win Flanders on Sunday? Well, of course they can. But will they? We'll find out at the weekend when the big race itself materialises. That man we're about to speak to, Mads Pedersen, one of the day's favourites, although plenty of those even with his own team.
Hi Mads, congratulations on Gent-Wevelgem.
Thank you.
First, tell us a bit how it has been since. Did you have a bit of time to celebrate, or 1 week before Flanders it was not possible?
You know, we're professional bike riders, and celebrations have to be after the last classic. So celebration will be after Roubaix. Now we are focused on the next races we're doing.
Speaking of a busy timing, you do lots of races before Flanders, but unlike most of the riders now, you don't do altitude training camp. Can you tell us a bit why and what is important for you to have so many races just before Flanders?
I think I said it a few times before. I like the racing. I like to get the speed from racing in the legs, and I believe for me I can let's say, train harder in the races than I can do myself. So yeah, that's why I still pin the numbers quite a lot before the classics.
What's the plan for today? How to win this one?
We tried to do as we did in the other 2 races. I know we didn't win E3, but we were definitely up there with numbers, and I think that's our strength right now, that we can play with a lot of good guys in finals and pre-finals, and that's our main goal.
Well, it's a pretty good main goal, and of course Pedersen at winning Gent-Wevelgem didn't work out for him in E3, and I guess just getting a little bit greedy. Visma Lease Bike with Wout van Aert certainly be also one of the favourites, but for me, within Little Trek, they've got so many who could actually raise their arms in glory at the end of the day. Jesper Philipsen, we've got Tom Squinch, we've got Jonathan Milan as well, who for many starts as one of those will he, won't he favourites. I think he's got a great chance. Well, Visma Lease Bike have had their heels been nipped at by a few teams out here. They've brought out the giants. I like that. Speaking of which, we've got one ourselves. His name, of course, is Matt Stevens. Matt, it's one of those days, isn't it, where we're never quite sure how this one's going to pan out.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We've had a lot of cobble races so far. This is the hors d'oeuvre, isn't it, before Flanders on Sunday? But this is going to be a spectacular race in its own right. A fair bit shorter than Flanders, but with an absolutely stellar field that rolled out earlier on. Cannot wait to see how this one unfurls and presents itself to us.
Well, as with so many of the races as part of this festival, starts off with a kind of a gentlish run-in. Should we check the map out for you? This is how it stacks up. Now, don't worry, it is a bit overcooked piece of spaghetti that's been dropped on the floor. That's how we start. We don't get to our first coat or our first helling until we've got 52 kilometres complete. And then it's showing us a Palmares. I was hoping for a map, to be honest. But anyway, we then race on. Here we are. Let's do it again. Why not? So good, they named it twice. 8 of the pavé sections, the last of which comes just 6.3 kilometres from the line. We have 12 helling to deal with along the way. So as you can see, a little bit of loop-de-doop. We actually go through Oudenaarde on a big old crossroads. We love Oudenaarde so much, we just can't help but visit it again. And of course, we'll be heading back to Waregem ultimately for our finale. So that's back through Oudenaarde there, and that's our run for home. Still with Côte and indeed pavé to deal with along the way. And here is our breakaway group. Yeah, we've got one, and they've got 2 minutes and 33, and it's a reasonably handy sized group, not least because so many teams have sent up a representation within the breakaway, which suggests that a lot of teams will be rather happy with the way this one has panned out. We'll go through them for you now. This is our breakaway with 104 kilometres remaining. That tells us that there is an awful lot of racing still to be had upon this day. Well, we've already been over our first coat, the Hellestraat. We've had our first bit of pavé as well. We've been over the Volkengemberg and indeed the Holleweg as well. Some of these names may well seem familiar to you. And they should do, because we'll be playing with plenty when it comes to Sunday and the Tour of Flanders itself. Right now, we're heading for our third helling of the day. This is the Rotonde that is coming up. Now, races in this part of the world, especially when it's wet, especially when it's windy, I guess you might say, are always a race to the next obstacle, of which there are plenty. We have 8 pavé sections, 12 climbs to be dealt with throughout the day. And so it can feel like a series of sprints, and it's very, very wearing. Now, by the time you get to the end of the day, you'll find out who's sustained it, who's hidden best, and in fact, who's got the best level of support around them. Right now, so many teams have sent a rider up the road that essentially it's self-neutralising. There's a lot, not much chasing going on, and this gap has slowly but surely opened up to, 2 minutes and 32. But it did take about 20-odd kilometres before a breakaway finally got itself off and up the road and was acceptable to everybody. Little Trek doing a lot of pacing, and when you've got a day like today, likes of Ed Turns, Axel Kirsch and Tim de Klerk, they're likely to be support riders. De Klerk, the tractor, doing a job at the moment. And hardly surprising that Little Trek are taking on the duty of moderating the day. They don't have anyone in the break. But Matt Stevens, they have got so many riders who could win this. I think they are, if you just look down their roster, the favoured team today.
I think so. They are the team of the Classic so far. I mean, we know that opening weekend was dominated by Team Visma Lease Bike, but just the way that they've gelled as a unit, as a collective fighting force, as we look at one of the big pre-race favourites, just making his way back through the convoy. Should only be a couple of vehicles until he latches onto the back. Looking cool, calm and collective is Wout van Aert. They don't have representation out in front, but no, you're quite right. Little Trek, I think it's fair to say, I think if you looked at like Tom Scoynes, Jonathan Milan, Jasper Stuyven and Mads Pedersen, if any four of those riders won it, you wouldn't be surprised. Tim de Klerk, he's doing his job on the front, still trying to get used to him in his new colours, of course, of Lidl Trek. And even Ed Turns and Alex Kirsch, they're going to be, I've been very impressed with Alex Kirsch over the last 10 days or so. He's been riding very well. But no, they are the team of the moment, and they seem to have been able to crack the code, the enigma, the problematic thorn in everybody's side of Mathieu van der Poel. He isn't here today, so I think we'll see a really different sort of race. And although Mathieu van der Poel has had a very light race programme so far, the fact that he's not here will make this race very different, because he opens things up so early. Everybody has to react. So this race already has got a different feel to it. It's a good move up in front, as you were saying, Carlton, but there's some big teams that have missed it, including Bora Hansgrohe, Groupama, Lidl Trek and Team Visma Lease Bike, and that's why we're seeing these teams on the front.
We are. They're all part of the proceedings today. Jordi Meus would be many people's pick from Bora Hansgrohe. They're taking more than a little turn on the front. There's other cards, of course, to play out there. Meus, though, after Sunday's race, you've got to take Meus very, very serious indeed. He finished third behind Pedersen and Van der Poel. And he's actually been on pretty stellar form so far this season as well. He's twice shown himself on very good days. He can be amongst the fastest. And therein lies the conundrum, Matt. You've got to, if you are a quick man, you've got to hide, basically, until the moment that matters. You could end up losing it out to a breakaway, especially if a group go long, as we saw last year. The sprinters got beaten. But of all of this Flandrian festival, if we're allowed to call it that, the Dwars of Vlaanderen does open up more opportunities for those of mixed calibre, quick guys who can take on a few burrs.
I think so, and I also think because of the distance of the race, it's still a long race, especially over this sort of terrain. Most of the flat riding is gone now. It's just cobbles and bergs till the run into the line, up and down, not too much of a gap in between, not a massive opportunity to recover. But I think the fact that this is the best part of 70k shorter than the Tour of Flanders does open the race up a little bit. And just to your point about the fast men, yeah, the fast men have got to keep their powder dry a little bit, but on a race like Flanders, on a race like Dwars of Vlaanderen, you know, you have to be up at the front. You looked after by your team, but as we saw with Jordi Meus the other day, Jordi was actually doing a lot of pulling on the front too, just rolling. It was so impressive, and they've got another class rider who's been on the podium in one of the classics this year as well. He was on the podium in third in Brugge de Panne, and that's Danny van Poppel. So they've got two of the fastest riders in the field, but two riders that can get over these short climbs effectively, and they're not afraid to get stuck in. So you need somebody with pace, but also that can handle these bergs pretty well and have enough in reserve at the end.
Well, we've got Alberto Battiol, who's on stellar form, actually. Refound himself, winner of Flanders a few years ago. And Sean Kelly's pick back then, I might tell you, at 125 to 1. I remember getting very annoyed when his brother suggested that they should go halves after the result was known. Anyway, let's hear from Alberto Bettiol, shall we, for EF Education Easy Polish, who's gone out and done a recon, and he is also one of those outside tips.
Alberto, what's the plan for today?
Today we go see the last 120k of the race, Dwars of Vlaanderen, so à travers le Flandre, so the race that go through Flanders region, and it's gonna be fun.
kilometers super fast downhill, and then you enter the Maria Boorstraat, which you will also do in Flanders in the final, but then you entering from a different direction. So on top here on the Korte Keer, super fast down, right into the Maria Boorstraat.
This is the course that it was for 2 years in a row.
Ah, the same?
Yeah.
I do like Alberto Bettiol. There's a
It's
whiff of
funny,
James Bond about him, isn't there?
Carlton-
He's so cool.
It's not often that our thoughts align like that. I was just saying, if there were to be an Italian Bond, it would be Alberto
Seriously.
Bettiol. The name is Bettiol, Alberto Bettiol. Yeah, that's licensed to thrill. No, he's a pretty cool customer. He's got quite an interesting demeanour, isn't he? And that was quite interesting as well, Carlton. We saw him do that recon quite often. A lot of these recons will be done as part of a group, but he did that one tout seul, to coin a French phrase. Did it on his own, which was good. But no, he's in great form. That win the other day in Milan or Torino was rolling back the years, wasn't it? And I do remember. I think I was commentating alongside you and Sean for that edition of Flanders. And when Sean did say he puts a couple of quid on Bettiol, we did raise our eyebrows. But hey, the man knows his stuff, doesn't he? But no, the EF Education Easy Post have got a good squad here as well to back him up. But when you look at their squad, to me, it does appear to be all about Alberto Bettiol. And he's a smart rider, and clearly in a lot of form, and did look super confident there, didn't he?
He certainly did. Look how everyone just wants to put their nose in the wind at the moment, just in case there's actually a secondary reach. This is teams actually rolling to the front and trying to neutralise things just a little bit. All of the highways being used just for now. And also there's a danger. If it is mob-hounded like this and everyone's racked together because nobody's quite sure of the strategy, you could get a touch of wheels. So safest place to be is up front. Everyone's feeling precisely the same. And look at the drive that's being put in here by Alpecin de Koenig. Well, EF Education Post, Easy Post with Alberto Bettiol have missed out. So the men in pink, they're kind of spread right across the road here. We've got Alpecin de Koenig working for Jesper Philipsen, who it starts off as one of the pre-race favourites. For me, Mads Pedersen may well, he's not given to this, giving any gifts within his team. He's never done a gentleman's excuse me in his life, I don't think, as they race for this. Potential, of course, for a change of direction, crosswinds. Well, look at the treetops here. There's not much wind to race for, but they're all at it, and they're all at it because we said a sequence of sprints, Matt, and indeed racing to the action points of the day, and that's precisely what we're seeing right now. You get Pavé, you get Helling. Last thing you want to get is caught up behind somebody, thankfully dry, but with 96 kilometres of the day remaining, they're trying to run on to the Knotterberg, which they'll be getting to in just a short while. And so you get this sort of punchy nature to the day, don't you? One after the other to the solar plexus of cycling riders and indeed fans themselves.
Yeah, as we said, pretty flat start. Not too much in the opening few Ks, but this is where it gets pretty complicated. This is where we've got these multiple changes of direction, and that is why we saw Alpecin de Koenig on the front. For that exact reason, they've done the Hellestraat, Valkenburg, Hotond, and this is the fourth climb coming up on the menu that tops out with 93.1 Ks to go, and that's why we saw all that activity. Reminiscent, really, of coming into Big Bunch Sprint. Every single one of these approaches is massively important, and that's why we saw that big fight for position. There is a bit of wind blowing today. It's not super windy, as you said. You can just see the tops of the trees just swaying a little bit, but it's coming from the south to north, so there will be quite a lot of crosswind sections on this course because there's so many different multiple changes of direction as they head in and out of Waringen. And we're now in the we started off in West Flanders and we're heading over into East Flanders as the tractor just makes his way back to the front as well.
Oh,
look at the face on him.
Oh, he's amazing, isn't he? He actually loves this. I'm never quite sure whether it's a grimace or a smile, but it turns out to be the latter more often than not. And look how important this is to hit it first, because you can get caught out at any time. And what were we dealing with? Well, the Côte de Trio, as it's sometimes called here, depends whether you're speaking French or Flemish, the Nochteberg, just over 1 kilometre in length, so it's a pretty long one. 7% as 7% as an average, 11.8% as a maximum. And so this is one of those pinch points, one of these action points, Matt, where the pace will suddenly diminish and you can get caught out behind the less able if you've got the legs, get up there is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. And we're just seeing the rider on the front is Ed Turns. He swung off not too far away with Tim de Klerk, Alex Kirsch not too far away. And again, you've got to doff your cap to the way that Little Trek have transformed this season. Lots of new signings, not too sure exactly the entire number across stage racing, but primarily for the classics. And they are a real force to be reckoned with. A lot of other teams are still coming to terms with, that's a big squeeze, a massive squeeze. Just look at the pace at the back there. The riders at the back who were effectively the gap to the front to the rear now in the space of just a few metres. It's like 15 or 20 seconds to get back to the front. That could take multiple kilometres to move up now. But as you see, they've just knocked it up again now. They just want to be in control. They don't need at this point in the race. It's all about the approach, then they'll knock it off. And we saw it in extremis in last year's Tour of Flanders and even on loop. And I think it was Trek back then, actually, riding hard into the foot of the climbs and then knocking it off to almost walking pace and then going again over the top of the climbs in the crosswinds. It's a really interesting tactic, yeah.
It's almost like brake checking the bunch, isn't it? And especially when you get that transition, as you quite rightly pointed out, just on that squeeze point, like treading on a tube of toothpaste, those out front just shoot off, and the rest of them are left in the tube, I'm afraid. Here is the climb, already on it, as you can see, just on the foothills of it. This is no easy task. Thankfully, at least at this point in the early section, it is asphalt covered. Now, we've got a mix of that, Matt. You can see the old cobbles just suggesting themselves at the side of the road. Some are mixed, some are entirely asphalt, and some are entirely cobbles today.
Yeah, it is a real mix. We've got 8 actual cobbled sections, but some of the climbs themselves are cobbled sections, as you say. But this one, as you say, has been covered up, much to the upset to a lot of the local purists who like the cobbles. It can be quite controversial when we get cobbled climbs covered in asphalt. But a great crowd out here assembled today as they come up for Knochteberg. This is the first of 2 ascents. They'll come up this climb again with 52.9 k's to go, or 135.7. So this is one of the 2 climbs that will actually cover on 2 occasions. So 2 minutes and 3 seconds, a decent gap, but everybody's working pretty well together here. Nobody's trying to push the pace too much.
Indeed, Econ it is that's leading him up. This is Nicholas Markel at the back for DSM Firmenich. Donovan Grondin is up the road as well for Arkea B&B Hotels. Abrahamson has made the trip for the Blood and Custard of X Mobility. You can see him there in about wheel 4 or 5. Decathlon with their new trade livery, relaunched as a company, and they say bye-bye to the brown, which is a shame. So the AG Tour à la Mondiale old colours have gone, but Decathlon now have gone for some kind of mixture of tree frogs. Dries de Bont is the man for them who's up the road. Matthias Norsgaard keeps it Danish for the Movistar team. Casper Pedersen has also made the trip for Soudal Quickstep. So has Dries de Putter for Intermarché Wanty. Arkea B&B Hotels have Donovan Grondin, I think we mentioned him before, and Gachinard of Total Energies, who I haven't seen much of this year, I must admit. Just depends on the races you cover. But yes, he's up there for Total Energies, and it is locked down at the front. Well, if you've got somebody up the road, then maybe you don't want to invoke the chase. It's been absolutely frantic to get to this climb. We're on our third climb of the day. The Hotond is what we're doing. I beg your pardon. This is the Knochteberg, which peaks at 93 to go. And this is exactly what they were racing for, Matt. They did not want to get caught behind and then just have to make your way all the way back in. An absolute nightmare if you happen to get caught out.
Yep, total. Luckily, they're not pressing on too much over the top. One of the riders that was caught out, Tish Benoot, one of the key riders for team at Visma Lease. We've actually got a little bit of bad news coming through that Jan Tratnik did start today, but unfortunately he has had to abandon the race. So that's a key rider for the team Visma Leasebike squad, no longer in the race. But Benoot back on the back here. And as you can see, they've actually eased off that much. It's doesn't take too much effort to get over the climb. You've just got to be careful that you don't grind the gears or you don't overlap the wheel in front, because over the top, as you can see by the flags, it's a tailwind up this climb, and there's a right angle turn over the front. So we could see a couple of teams really start to accelerate from almost a standing start over the top of this climb. It might not happen, but in these sorts of races, you've got to be prepared for pretty much everything, especially as we approach half distance now.
Exactly. Karen and Verth just drifting towards the back. Magnus Sheffield, possibly the best hope for Ineos Grenadiers. Ben Turner will, I'm sure, have something to say about that. And the Swift family are here with Ben and Connor. Eli Viviani would have been his kind of game a few years ago. Not quite sure whether that is indeed the case. Josh Tarling also coming to make the trip. Now they take the turn in here, and Victor Campenaerts was there, just marauding, I think you might say. He'll be doing it a little bit later on. Gap has held 2 minutes and 29. I'm not surprised with the pace that was invoked by the peloton to try and close this down just as we get to this latest climb. Now this is only the third climb of the race so far. We will have 12 of them in total, and a few of them will get repeated. Next up, it's after the Knokterberg, it's the Kortekier. So we've had 4 climbs. Kortekier is next, and that comes very, very quickly in only 5 kilometres time, Matt.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure if this is a replay of what's happened earlier on. It is indeed a replay. I was worried there. We're not back on the climb again, but no, the Kortekier comes at 103 Ks, 85.4 Ks to go. And shortly after that as well, we've got the Berg ten Hout as well at 71.6. So we've only got between like 5 and 10 kilometre between pretty much all of the climbs, and the final climb of the day, they pick things up again in the crosswind. The final climb at Nokere comes at 9.2 Ks to go. But interestingly now, Groupama FDJ, they've got a good team. Watch out for Laurence Pithy. He's been so impressive. Stefan Kung and Valentin Madois amongst their team today.
2 minutes and 22 is the gap, a third of a devil, and you see the camera bike just struggling to get away from the riders, and the pace has been invoked here by Groupama Francis Hijeux. Stefan Kung, their choice candidate today, Valentin Madois, Laurence Pithy as well, many of you picking him out. Louis Aski will be very much part of proceedings. Now, there have been races to the climbs, and there will, of course, be, naturally enough, Mihailovic just having a little bit of trouble here, rear puncture for him. He's going to get that bike change as quickly as he possibly can. Trouble is when you have all of these climbs, which sometimes the cars are banned from going up and over, it takes a long time to get service, Matt, and this is one of those moments.
Yeah, you can just see firstly how long the bunch was, how spread out it was because of the acceleration on the front of Groupama FDJ. So you've got to drop all the way back through, you've got to go past, you'll put your hand up, but it can be quite a while before, unless you've managed to radio before the commissaire can see you. And then, as you can see, these are narrow country lanes, only wide enough for one car to pass. So even if you had a pretty decent draw, you can be up to a minute and a half before you even get a wheel, and then it's very difficult to chase, especially when the pressure's on. You know, it's the last place, even with 89, 90 Ks to go. The last thing you want to do is have to chase on roads like this. But this is good riding by Groupama. Not the team I thought might take this up, but the way that Pithy has been riding, and I think this slightly shorter distance might actually suit Pithy. It's not quite as brutal as Gent-Wevelgem, not quite as brutal as Flanders. He is a man on form, and he has got a ferocious finish.
And here he is.
That's unfortunately, that's not what we wanted at all. His team on the front, well, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. They need to knock it back a bit here.
They're not waiting for him. They'll be aware on the radio. Get yourself back in. So maybe their favours are transferring to Stefan Kung and Valentin Madois. Let's see if the heart is knocked out of them in a few moments' time, because they will be seeing the same pictures as us. Occasionally, they're about 12 or 18 seconds behind. So message just getting through now. Lads, Pitty's off the back. Oh my life! 88 kilometres to go. You know, that's part of the game. You've got to play whatever hand you're dealt, Matt. No choice sometimes.
Oh, totally. That was Oliver Legac on the front, as you see a couple of the riders. Yeah, just drifting off the back or chasing back on. This is Robbie Gees, and he's with Senna Layson, so they just drift. Not too sure what's happened to them, if they're chasing after a puncture or an issue, but that's not too good for Alpes and De Koning. But it just shows how difficult and how chaotic it is to get back in contact. But clearly, that there's no way they'd continue to ride at this point in the race with Pithy out the back there. It's clearly an issue of communication.
I think
I'd
so.
imagine they'd have knocked it off now, yeah.
Well, their problem is they're at the front. There's a whole load of chargers behind. There's not much room. And the next climb is coming up right now. Yeah. It's the Courtiquier, 900 metres, 6.5% as an average, 9.8% maximum. And this is where we hit last year's route, essentially. It's more or less mirrored from now on in. A lot of standing water, as you can see, where the farm vehicles have actually made their turns and caused those little puddles on the field. Thankfully, nobody visiting them just yet. And indeed, message got through to Groupama France des Jeux. They're dropping back just a little bit, and it's Little that pick it up. This is Marathon Madouas. How do you feel? You're in decent shape? Well, I'm currently happy with my shape. He says I have to show now that I'm ready for Sunday. Today's race is going to be great. It's the last race before the big one, of course, on Sunday. So, how's it going with Laurence Pitty? He's pretty good. I don't think he meant that poetry, but anyway, in the start of the season, will you be working for him? For the team, it's amazing. It's going to be the first time that we race together with Stefan Kung, Laurence Pitty and myself, so we will have each other. With each has a different plan to allow the team to be able to play for every scenario within the race. And since the beginning of the classics, we're not going too bad, but we would like a big performance. And I think we're in the top 3 or 4 teams, but we do not have the results we should have. So having 3 riders today will be good and should be getting a satisfying result. Different plans for today. Tell us about them. He says, well, we'll see how the race goes. And it'll be hard to race with the wind if it blows up, especially during the climbs. But it can also be a sprint of a little group at the end, as we had last year. So we just have to prepare for every scenario and be ready for the changes that throw up from the start. Wise words, and words that you could probably have written down even before the interview. We've got 3 riders. We're going to try our best and see what happens. It's the potted version.
Again, we don't generally, with the greatest of respect, some of these interviews get too much information. They're not going to give away the game plan. And when you look at
it's lovely to see them, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do rate Valentin Madouas. He first burst onto the scene in that very famous edition of Amstel, didn't he? I think he was 4th in this when Mathieu van der Poel won, and that was the first time we really saw Madouas. He's currently in that lovely livery of French national champion, and this is the sort of terrain he can ride so well on. And also, if you look at Sam Watson as well, he's been a real regular placement in their classics team as well this season. So, and as well as Lewis Askey, who's been up on near the front. But Gap's holding steady now, isn't it?
Yeah.
At 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But next on the menu, in about 12 k's time, we've got the Berg Tenut, which comes at the top of which comes at 71.6 k's to go.
Yeah, and Scary Mary, they should really, I don't know what that is in Flemish, to be honest, but anyway, 21% we're talking about as a maximum, 1,100 metres, so that the Berg Tenut or Ten Houte is really horrible. So yeah, that will come with 72 kilometres to go. So we've got 13 kilometres of relative calm. If you could ever say that about anything. This is the Courtiquier that we've just dealt with, 10% really as a maximum in the heart of it. But our peloton are the ones that now have to come and enjoy it after it's been endured already by our breakaway. Solid, Matt, at 2 minutes and 26, isn't it?
Yeah, they're doing a great job, actually, holding steady. You could see the way they're riding the climbs, not attacking each other way too early. It's all about strengthening numbers and also putting pressure on some of the big teams behind. And as you can see, no real surprise. The team so far of the last couple of weeks, Lidl Trek, just holding steady at the front.
Luxemburger. I called him that once, and he said, "Luxury burger, yes, please." Yeah, our Luxembourg champion, Alex Kirsch, doing a good job. He's got a sense of humour. We like that. In fact, they're looking nice and relaxed. If you got to the front, it's like happy days. Here we are. Intermarché Wanty showing their shoulders for the first time. They have got Dries de Putte up the road, but Biniam Girmay is starting to wake up. I don't mean that in any negative sense, but in terms of results, he's getting to where he would, and we would all love him to be. Had a quietish start to the season, I must say, did Biniam. But yeah, in E3, suddenly there he was, and I think that he's got something to offer. He might go for being a bit anonymous today if he's got a big plan for Flanders itself on Sunday. But I mean, how do you choose to play it if you're someone like Biniam, where you've got capabilities on a day like this, but the big one is still to come?
Yeah, it's another puncture here, unfortunately.
Markle from the break.
Markle, yeah, from the breakaway. Unfortunately, he's going to have to stop pretty quickly. You can ride on the rim and on the tyre when you're on the asphalt, but on the cobbles you're going to be skitting all over the place. So hopefully he's got a good chance of still getting back in, especially with the gap as it is. But no, Grimai's been riding well. I don't think he's quite on the form that saw him win Ghent Wevelgem, but he is on the upward trajectory, and importantly, he is making these selections. So he's in a good position. He's got such a strong sprint. I think, to be honest with you, given the form that we've seen at the moment, I think he'd dearly love to win Flanders, but I think the form that he's got at the moment, if he plays it canny today, there's more of a chance of a good result in this race, which will give him more morale. I think it's almost as if you don't, for some riders here, because of the reasons we talked about before, the distance, the opportunities it provides, the fact that Van der Poel isn't here, I do think that we have a more open race. Could be a group sprint at the end, could be a little breakaway. We saw about 35, 36 riders come to the finish last year, a save for Christophe Laporte, who was solo. So I do think this race provides opportunities. Could be a good one for Grimai, more than I think a realistic opportunity for winning Flanders, personally speaking.
Well, let's see. There are a few riders that suddenly, Matt, you know what it's like. Form, your legs can suddenly come to you. And I'm hoping that happens to Ethan Vernon, because by his own standards, he's been a little bit quiet so far this year. Great days of expectation where we've heaped expectations upon his shoulders. And I'm just wondering whether Ethan himself is going to be in support of the likes of Chris Nylunds and maybe Corbin Strong, who's been fantastic. He can get over a few bergs and go quickly as well. Israel Premier Tech have had a great, it has to be said, start to the year. But Ethan Vernon would have liked to have been higher up, I think, the priority list.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a win, hasn't he? So I think his first race for that team was a win. But I think he's the kind of rider, when you look at him, when you look at what he's good at, he's got that great track craft, he's powerful, he can TT when he can sprint. He should be a good classics rider.
Got it all, yeah.
He certainly has. But look at this. Again, it's this airborne flow. There's real strategic points in the race that Lidl Trek are picking their opportunity to make it hard for everybody else. They're the team that aren't just in the ascendancy, they are the dominant team. Look at the results. That win the other day from Mads Pedersen, it was absolutely superb. But they, as well as Pedersen's form, as they just lean into that corner, funneling through beautifully. Another abandon there from Tom De Vriend of Q36.5, unfortunate to see. But imagine what the morale's like in that team now at the moment in Lidl Trek. There was a lot of expectation heaped on their shoulders. It took a little while for things to gel, but now they are the team to beat. They really are. And they've got options too. Yeah,
they have. I think the thing about Lidl Trek is that the problem for all of the team, it's not a problem, it's actually a gift almost, is Mads Pedersen. Got a nudge? Another technical, I think. Looks like it might well be just a thrown chain getting himself back in. Or possibly just riding on to get as much distance as they possibly can, so it's shorter after you get your repair. 81 kilometres to go for our breakaway. Still dealing with the pavé, as you can see. But Lidl Trek, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Mads Pedersen is a man who is very assured, I must admit. When he first won the Worlds in Harrogate, when he became world champion, we were all saying, who is this kid? Now, of course, he's a little bit older, but he very much imposes himself on the team. If there's a sniff, it has to be him. Let's see. Well, Alex Kirsch still doing a lot of pacing. He's doing a lot because basically the rest of the team can win it. Tim de Klerk and Ed Turns will be the helpers. Tom Squinch has had a great start to the year as well. Matt, we talk about him. I thought the candle was just beginning to diminish, but no, he's been so bright this year, hasn't he?
It's without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, he's had big wins in the past. Days of the Tour of California is a race he always liked. But this year, I think it's fair to say we've seen a very different Tom Scoynes. He is a real force to be reckoned with. And he races with real verve, real panache.
Yeah,
He's unafraid to attack. We saw that in Strada Bianca, where he finished in the runners-up spot in what is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful, brutal races of the year. That's we know that now. But in the classics as well, he's been performing really well, and he just adds a really interesting dimension to an already super strong Lidl Trek team. You know, everybody has an opportunity to shine, and I think the wonderful thing about coming into this race for Lidl Trek is, and we heard there was an interview with Jasper Stuyven, is that we haven't really got an out-and-out leader in this race. Although that's what he was saying outwardly. We're going to come into this race.
But it might be me.
We've got options, but it could be him. I mean, like I said before, if Pedersen, Stuyven, Scoynes or Milan won this race, you'd say, yep.
Yeah.
None of those winning this would be a surprise, and they know that. And look at the way they're riding. This is like Soudal Quickstep rode the classics 5 or 6 years ago. It really is. And I know that people might complain about those tired comparisons, but you have to compare them to dominant classics teams of the past. And Soudal Quickstep are going through quite a long transition period here. They've got a good squad here. In fact, Yves Lampaard's the only rider in the field who's actually won this race before, back in 2017 and 2018. Vast experience, but they just don't seem to have gelled. And it must be hard psychologically as well to regroup and find themselves really in the shadow of this new super team in the classics.
Yeah, exactly. Lidl Trek with Jonathan Milan. He'll not only be cheering if he wins, so will I. I'll let you know. Yeah, he's been frighteningly fast this year. And he's also shown that he can beat the likes of Jesper Philipsen, who is equally one of those that you must include. Here is Pitti just getting himself back in after his issues. Clearly he's been on the blower and said, look, don't bother waiting up for me, fellas. I'll be able to get back in myself. I don't know whether that's, because nobody has waited up for him, I don't know whether that's youthful exuberance, a great deal of self-belief, and how well-founded that is. I hope for Pitti that this is something that he can come back from. He's still got 79 kilometres to go, for goodness sake, and he's absolutely at the top of his game at the moment. We have spoken about him on more than a number of occasions, and this is one where we're going to be doing, again, exactly the same. He doesn't seem to have a limit, both in Kern and Wevelgem. His potential was absolutely there. And, you know, after Tour Down Under as well, as Matt said, he's going to be a contender. Welcome back, those of you who've been away, and it's as you were, really, out front, bossing it, Lidl Trek. And bossing the bosses, Mads Pedersen. It's kind of like he's the ringmaster. I'm not quite sure whether, you know what we heard from that interview with Madouas earlier on, you've got to play whatever cards are given to you, and they have 3 different battle plans. I think Lidl Trek always start off with plan A, which is Mads Pedersen, and it's almost like it's only at his behest if something else is played with along the way. I don't think there's much freedom within that team, is what I'm trying to say. You've got to back Mads first, and then if he says so, you can go and back yourself.
Yeah, it's one of two things. As we see Victor Campenaerts just moving up from a Lotto Destiny, as they're now known. Let's look at the length of that bunch. Just cast your eye, just see how long that is. Wow, that's the place you do not want to be. You'll get that whiplash effect at the back. Quite often you get riders there who are chasing back on, as we see the unfortunate. I mean, that's the best part of 500 metres. It's like half a K back.
I know, you're absolutely right, Matt. Sorry, I just spotted Pitti. He'd got about 20 riders behind him, and he's sprinting, trying to get up this line. How much do you think that's going to take out of him?
Quite a lot. It will take something out of you, and I don't know whether they've been able to send somebody back to try and assist.
Nobody's gone back, yeah.
As we see the Ineos Grenadiers just drifting through. On the radio there, is it the rider that I think will be their leader for this? I mean, Josh Tarling was on the front there, is actually Ben Turner. Magnus Sheffield too, a rider with good options. They haven't had the best year at all. It's one of their poorest years, I think it's fair to say.
Very
but
quiet,
they'll be looking to try and turn things around. They're a team, you know, of real class. It just hasn't quite happened for them. As we look at the damage behind, this is split to bits in these crosswinds. That's
Rutger Gray, who's trying to get back for EF Education Easy Post. And some big names who've found themselves out of shape here. Robert from Cofidis just looking absolutely forlorn. This is the nature of the day, is that we have these constant tasks to deal with, these pivot points, these action points, if you will. and you better be handy at taking them on and indeed not get too upset by them. Berg ten Houte is next. In fact, we've got a sequence without any pavé of 4 Helling that on this loop really start to challenge us. We're coming back towards Oudenaarde, by the way, on this latest loop, but Berg ten Houte, and yeah, we still searching. Change of bike here, no numbers upon the bike, so essentially it was a quick change artist. Just put your power meter where it should be on the new steed, but he's on the wrong group, and there's a big split here, so he's finding himself in traffic. Then he's going to latch onto a slower group that are already in trouble and maybe not best motivated. Viviani was back there, by the way. He sprinted through one group, another group. He's now got 2 other groups that he's got to bridge over to. This is horrible for him, Matt.
Yeah, and also it's a difficult one. You generally end up in a group of riders who have had similar luck to yourself, but generally speaking, riders who aren't on great form have been punted out the back in the crosswinds because they couldn't hold position. That's not great. It's not as if you're in a group of riders who are super strong. I mean, there's a chance they might get back in contact. You can just see it is super windy. We saw the riders from the shot we had before actually leaning their bikes into the wind. It's a proper crosswind section here. But Little Trek have clearly forensically looked at this course, and they know what they're going to be doing. They're not just arbitrarily riding along and making it hard for everybody. They're backing off, regrouping, and incisively trying to break this race apart, either on the climbs or in the crosswinds, and look at the damage that it's causing. Almost Ben Swift also in the back of this group as well. Group just in front.
This is the pity group. He's got just the back of the back group here. I imagine there's even a few tail behind him, because he was heading about 20 riders who I think are in a further group, maybe a 5th group. We've still got a breakaway at 2 minutes and 10, but because of the pace that's being invoked here by Lidl Trek, it's starting to shatter absolutely everything. They're the daddies at the moment, and I'm afraid this is not a great sight if you find yourself in this kind of scenario. We talked about Renard, who was struggling in the wrong group, and now he's found himself just off the back of yet another large group. That was looked like a regathering of 3 of the other groups, so we've got 2 bigger groups now starting to form here, Matt, but you want to be in this one.
Yeah, definitely. Just look at the pace of turns on the front, driving it almost at the end of his tether, just trying to keep it going. Oh, there's a crash. Oh, was that a crash? Looked like there was a little bit of a coming together, a nudge. Yeah. Thankfully, nobody came off in that one. But it's not long, as you say, before we come on to the approach. We're approaching now the Berg ten Houte, which is climb number 6, Hellingen number 6 on the menu. And also now it is the Waspis kit of Team Visma Lisa bike, just bringing Wout van Aert into position on the left-hand side into this corner.
We're going to hear from Wout van Aert in a moment. This is yet another pinch point. Every single one of these, they can come into it 6 wide. It's about 4 wide on the exit.
Wout, can you give us some news? How have been the day following the crash in Harelbeke?
Yeah, it was not easy. The cobbles are always hard, so it was quite stiff, and was a bigger impact than I felt at first. But yeah, doing okay now.
Do you feel fully recovered now?
Yeah, I feel recovered from the efforts, of course, but yeah, we'll see how the stiffness evolves.
And how is the shape? Do you think the preparation is going as you expected?
Well, I felt quite good in E3. I raced really how I wanted, and I hope to have the same legs today, because today is another nice opportunity.
I guess you have seen Gant Wevelgem. Is there any tech to take from Lidl Trek strategy that day?
Oh, they raced really aggressive, and turns out that it was a good tactic because Mats won. So yeah, heads off for their victory. Was really nice to see, and yeah, especially deserved.
There you go. It's almost like reporting back, really. It was his own reportage, rather than any kind of deep insight as to how he would go. Everyone comes to this KG, of course. Nice to see that Julian Alaphilippe is mustering himself and getting back up to the front. Somebody who's had a very long road back to recovery, I think, to being fully fledged again. Not helped, I don't think, at all by his team principal. But anyway. Sometimes the owners get a little bit upset with their with their charges, let's put it that way. Well, the best way to answer that kind of thing and put Patrick Lefevere back in his box is to do something. Alaphilippe, he wouldn't have started amongst the favourites. He's not one of the top picks, but he can surprise Matt, and you just never know when form can suddenly rock back to a great man like him.
Yeah, and I think it's a measure of the man. You know, I mean, he has been
kept his peace.
I think it's fair to say, yeah, he's been riding well. He's also played his cards close to his chest. He's not got involved in this quite barbed discourse that we've had on social media and in the columns of the papers that Patrick Lefevere writes for. But what you almost have to understand is as well, and I'm not defending anybody in this case, is that Patrick Lefevere is Patrick Lefevere. This is the way he operates year in, year out, rider after rider.
Totally.
And it's you kind of know that's his character, because he can also get the best out of you as well. So he works in mysterious and strange and also a little bit odd ways. But I'd really like Alaphilippe to get back to where he was before, but we'll see if that's today.
Berg Ten Hag says 12% and 13% Ten Houter. I can tell you the maximum is actually 21%. So, yeah, within that little graph, there was a spiky, nasty bit that has not been displayed fully to you. So here you go. This is our breakaway that are going to take it on. Now, remember this these hoardings, because you're going to see them again. And here is your rattly section. Thankfully dry, so that at least they've got that. But look how narrow it is. And the bare open feet as well of the barriers on one side. And in fact, the feet on the right-hand side here, as we look at it, are actually covering up the sort of more, the smoother drain section. There's a little bit more of that exposed as you come to some of the steepest parts of it right now. Basically, you need to be up towards the front if you're going to be in a happy place in a bigger group than this, just in case there's any coming together, a few bumps, and then you've got to get yourself going on a nasty, nasty, spiteful piece of terrain. These guys are going to sail through this, relatively speaking, compared to those who are behind, but it's another charge into another real test, Matt.
Yeah, Donovan Grandin starting to really suffer. A man that's exceptionally good on the track. I think Grandin is actually a world champion on the track, but suffering on the cobbles. Great side-on shot here. That low heli shot, Magnus Shepard. Look at the acceleration here. Visma Lisa Bike wanting to take Wout van Aert into a good position at the bottom of the climb, but can just see as well, not too far away, is a Tish Benoot. I haven't seen Jorgensen just yet. I wonder where Jorgensen is. I can't. There he is, just on the inside. He's just on the wheel of Wout van Aert. Jorgensen, another real foil for the men in yellow and black today. I'm wondering whether they'll just knock it up on this one or really start to open up the race, because for the first time in a while, Lidl Trek Carlton have just dropped back. But as you say correctly, you've got to ride on the cobbles. There's no opportunity to ride on the smooth section to the left or the right. The place to be is at the front or in the breakaway, where you can pick your line. But no, there's no easy ride up this climb on those gradients. Not the most ferocious of cobbles, but nasty nonetheless. And there is the stats again of this climb.
Yeah, toughest part actually comes really early on. It's a shame we haven't seen the breakaway go through it, but we're back here because these are the main names. It's Mick van Dijk, called Blimey Mary Poppins, who is going for this right now. Tim van Dijk also very much involved. Let's see, big pickup, and suddenly I love seeing a little bit of ambition off the front, and Ineos Grenadiers would like to have a little bit of a dig. Looking back further through, you can see that Anthony Turgis also wants to be up towards the fore. And we've got a little bit of separation already starting to reveal itself. Julien Alaphilippe is just tucked onto the right-hand side of the road. There's Vermont at the back, and this is exactly what you don't want. That's Kellen O'Brien for Jaco Alula out of shape. We do have Michael Matthews here, by the way. Haven't caught hide nor hair of him just for the time being. And this looks like we're getting our first sort of whiff of selection, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. That was a good move there. One thing I did notice was that Wout van Aert wasn't interested in taking the wheel of Magnus Sheffield. He just dropped back onto the wheel of Van Dijk, and now is forcing other riders to jump across to the man from Ineos Grenadiers. This is a good move. This is about trying to be on the front foot, force these selections rather than following. It's a good mindset, I think, that Ineos Grenadiers have got here. He glances over his shoulder. And there we go. Yeah, Mads Pedersen in fourth. I tell you what, looking at the face of Pedersen and Turgis, that was a hard effort there by Magnus Sheffield. It's really strung things out. Hasn't snapped the elastic, but a good move nonetheless. And there, Josh Tarling as well, looking very good. Monstrously large, isn't he, on the bike? So powerful is Tarling. The European time trial champion, of course. Good to see him in the mix. But that move by Sheffield has strung things out and actually snapped the elastic about halfway down the field here.
I love seeing the time trialists getting their nose ahead. We've got Remy Cavagna here. We've got Luke Durbridge, who back in the day used to be able to wrestle a bike over great distances. And Tobias Ludvigsson's also here for Q365 Pro Cycling. I haven't seen much of them, actually. Gamay's made the trip here. Campanarts just wants to stamp his authority, quite literally, with the pedals here. Looking back through this group, this is looking very handy. And here are the splits that we were talking about, Matt. If you get caught out, then you caught out big time. Ballestret group here and a few others as well that should be better placed than this. And they found themselves in trouble. Oh, my goodness, Matt.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, Lampaert, I mean, it's clearly not on a good day. The former Belgian champion, twice a winner of this race, as we mentioned before. Doesn't look like it's going to be a day for him, that is for sure. But meanwhile, up in the front, look at that. That was quite interesting. We saw Josh Tarling trying to get some shelter behind. Look at the difference in the size, the stature of Victor Campenaerts. Hardly any shelter at all for the man from Great Britain behind the Belgian. Jorgensen also looking up, but nobody willing to pick this up. This is quite interesting. 70k's to go. They're all happy with the situation.
You think they would as well, Matt, because I'm looking through this group. There's some teams who've missed out in their entirety, I've got to tell you. Case Boller's made it up, good lad. But I noticed that Israel Premier Tech with like a Chris Nylands, Corbin Strong, Ethan Vernon, I don't think there's anyone from Israel in this group. That just shows you, if you get together in colour order to try and help each other out, sometimes it can backfire because you can find yourself entirely as a group playing on a smaller stage.
Yep. I can't spot anybody unless they're right in the middle of that group. As you say, there's another big attacker. Just Charling attacks on the left-hand side of the road. Kirsch follows. Kung again on the wheel. That little move just then was by the Swiss champion. That was Mark Hershey who tried something. This is the will to get in the crosswinds as well. The amount of raw power that Josh Tarling can kick out is mightily impressive. There you go. Look at the devastation behind it. It's Fred Wright, actually, who's being forced to chase. Gianni Vermeersch, I think it is on his wheel.
Here we go. Check this out. I mean, splits absolutely everywhere, Matt. It's not just the wind, however. It's the race to every single one of these pivot points that we've got. And this is the desperation stakes to try and get back in. Pity I don't think it's made it through to the front group yet, by any means.
No. I don't think there would have been any chance, not from the way the racing has been on at the back here. He's going to be in a very difficult position. Hopefully, for him, he can get back in. But right now, there's no sign of him as we look at what it's like back behind in these little groups, these little echelons that have been formed over the top of the climb. The thing is, it's hard on the climbs themselves, but when they continue to pile on the pressure, and that's what Sheffield actually did. He rode part of the climb really hard, and there was no opportunity to recover over the top. So there's a real selection that's been made. Still, a fair few riders in that front group. I'd say 35, 40 riders, and I think that second and even the third group will probably get back on again. But then we'll be on the next climb, and it'll all happen again. It's this repetitive process, isn't it? Yep.
It is. Our breakaway already taking on. It's a kilometre long, 7.7% with a 14% maximum. Right, Vincent and Elisa Bike have had enough of this. They're coming to the front and they're saying, look, we're not even prepared to share the duties. They've got, there's kind of blood in the water and the sharks are coming out, aren't they? They are going for this. There seems to be a little bit of a pecking order at the moment. Top chickens, I think you might say, Lidl Trek. It feels like a game of chicken, doesn't it, this? Just how much are you prepared to invest in the drive this early on, Matt? 68 kilometres to go on what's been a very tough day. It took 20, 30 kilometres just to get ourselves a breakaway. I was still holding a margin of 1 minute and 22, but it's been absolutely relentless. The season's been like that, actually, thinking of it, hasn't it?
It's been great. The racing's been great. We've had quite a few different... Although there's been dominant teams, we've had a real different smattering of riders on the top of the podium in the Classic so far, which has been very interesting indeed. But I think they've known that there's been some damage behind, and Team Visma Lease Bike are now hitting it hard on the front.
Oh, hello. Well, just hoping that this is not too bad. Is that Bullens on the deck? We'll get a check on it from one of the smaller groups. Couldn't see who the Wanty rider is. Just about to get a check on that for you right now. Let's have a look as they take a tumble. Lawrence Rex, I think, is one of those who's just gone. That was him doing a full roll. Looked worse than, thankfully, it turned out to be. And Rex is back off and underway. Cedric Bullens kind of torn up just a little bit, but looks healthy, save for that. And look at this out front. EF Education, easy post. This is for Bettiol. There's a huge one.
Kirsch is down. There's several riders from Lidl Trek in the mix there. That's a big... Oh, it looks like Van Aert is down as well on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, well, we didn't see that up front. I'm hoping that they're okay. But there's a few as well from Lidl Trek. Let's have a look. So this must have been up towards the front. That is a huge tear, and that is a man just struggling to get his breath. He's gone down hard. That's going to knock the stuffing out of him. That's Lidl Trek. How many? 1, 2, 3. Oh, no. That is terrible for Wout van Aert. And look how long he's actually gone along the paving. You can see that tarmac scar upon him. And there's a few others here. Yes, Stuyven is on the deck and he's down there in tears. No surprise at all. That's Mads Pedersen just taking his helmet off right now. Benjamin Gamay is also on the deck here. This is absolute nightmarish. Vermeersch has also been caught out. This has been a huge swathe of the favourites that have been cut down, I'm afraid. Harry Sweeney up just wiping some sweat from his eyes. But that looks terrible for Wout van Aert. Let's have a look at it. It's front group. Yeah, let's have a look. Where did the moment come from? Bit of a fold over at the front. It's reflected all the way through, and down they go like skittles. Matt, it's terrible.
They would, I mean, we couldn't see exactly what happened. There was nothing from the left or the right happened in the centre. It looked like a gust of wind. Do you know what it was? It looked like there might have been a gust of wind, a touch of wheels. They're moving at 50, 60 Ks an hour. You can just see Tim van Dijk there just touching the top of his hat. He knows when you're on the bike and you hear that sound behind, it's awful. It goes through you like a dose of salt, hits you in the stomach. It's a horrible sound. Flesh and carbon hitting the deck like that. It's a nasty, nasty sound. Let's just wish... From everybody here, myself and Carlton included, everybody on the deck, we wish them all the very best. But unfortunately, from time to time, that is the sheer brutality of bike racing. It doesn't take any prisoners. Nasty to see.
Will not be taking any further part in this race. That's quite clear. They're nursing him at the moment, and that's precisely what you need. So, battle plans reimagined then for Visma Lease bike. Jorgensen and Thies Benoot, they will be their cards to play. Mads Pedersen was on the deck. You saw that as well. Likewise, Benjamin Gamay, I'm afraid, will not be, even if they get back on their bikes, they're not going to be in any fit state to take any further part. This is Jesper Stuyven as well, just being attended to. This is precisely what nobody wants to see, I'm afraid, and we're seeing far too much of it. That's Gatsoli, who's to the side. Gamay looks in all kinds of trouble, and a lot of work for the medical services to deal with. Possibly the most impactful crash we've seen all season.
I think so.
Not something we want.
No, we've seen big crashes, but that was one of the biggest crashes we've seen of significance, where riders clearly are hurt, and it's never what you want to see. We'll get a bit of a debrief at the end of the race in relation to exactly what happened, but there's been a few quite strong gusts of wind, and they were like, it was, again, clearly just a touch of wheels, that little bit of an overlap when the bike leans to the left or right, and it can be absolutely catastrophic.
Matt, it was pace and proximity, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. 65 kilometres to go. Let's. We still have a race on, of course, and at least we have some respite. This is head of the race: Pedersen, De Porter, Norsgaard, De Bont. We have Grondal, Ekorn, Abramson, and Gachinard. They've been up the road for quite some time, but we've had an enormous crash. And it's taken out, I'm afraid, some of the major players of the day. Lidl Trek, who were setting a lot of the pace, kind of caught out midfield. They'd just come off the nose, essentially. Mind you, Van Aert and his boys had done a lot of work, and now we have, all of a sudden, 5 just getting a very effective fighting force, including Bettiol. We've got Kung here as well. And they want to take their own opportunities. Why not? If their team have been burnt, it'll spur them on.
It will. It looks like Volgren's in the back of this group as well. I think that is Michael Volgren at the back, a man who himself has come back from injury, spent a year riding with the development team for EF Education Easy Post, who've stuck by their Danish start, and there he is in that group. And the difficult thing about this situation is what do you do? You've lost your team leader. Lidl Trek have wiped out at least 3 of their riders, but unfortunately, it's one of the most brutal, difficult things about bike racing. You do have to somehow recalibrate your brain emotionally. You don't know that the situation behind it, how hurt your teammates are, and I tell you what, it's hard. This is a really difficult situation in the race, and you know, there's nobody to criticise here. It's just that the racing is on. And there's a legitimacy here, and it's just unfortunate. And this is the selection that's been made. Bettiol is there, as you say. There is Bolgren. Tiesjebanu already been down. You can just see the blood on his left knee, and then Jorgensen. And they're just catching a couple of the riders from the breakaway that's been dropped. So a strong move here.
This is what we don't want to see. Mark van Aert, I'm afraid, is off to hospital, and the pain is being expressed. Still. 63 kilometres to go, 38 seconds is the gap to our break, and now it is the favoured few, I think, those who are lucky enough to get away with it, who are going to chase into this group right now. They've got 39 seconds advantage over a high-quality bridging set of, I would say, probably 5, maybe 6 riders who are, well, determined to just bridge this gap. Michael Volgren and Alberto Bettiol must be at least counting their blessings. One, that they avoided the crash, but not only that as well, the pace was already on. You're not going to ask anyone to knock it off, especially if the crash happens behind you. They've got every right to push on. And to my mind, Alberto Bettiol has suddenly become absolute out-and-out favourite for the day. There he is, just stowing a gel right now. That's Tiesjebanu, number 3, with along him. Jorgensen's also here. This is phenomenal. Great deal of opportunity for these guys who find themselves in this very privileged position. Benoot, Jorgensen, Kung, Bettiol, Valgren, Grondin, Vacanui. I suggest that within this group there are 4 riders who could win it, Matt, and with 63 kilometres to go, they've got a great chance. Unfortunately, those chances are now absent from the likes of the fallen, which we include Jesper Philipsen. Mads Pedersen, I think, is back on the bike. That's a blessing, but I can tell you what, Van Aert is also about to depart for hospital. That's a whole raft of favourites from the upcoming Tour of Flanders on Sunday who will be absent, Matt, no doubt.
It looks like it. We saw Gregory Ras there, excuse me, the DS of Little Trek, just staying with Jasper Stuyven. And at this point in the race as well, what you've got to look at as well, these aren't bike riders, they're people. You know, they need to be looked after, they need attention, they need to know they're being cared about. And fundamentally, there are times in a bike race like this where it's like, OK, I need to look after Jasper Stuyven, the person, not the bike rider. And that's why we're seeing, you know, arguably you could say the DS needs to stay in the car and take control of the race. But no, these are people, so that they need to be looked after. I don't want to see any more pictures of them in pain either, to be perfectly honest with you. I think we need to focus on the race at hand, but also reflect on how hard this sport is. And you can be riding along in the front group, and sometimes, Carlton, as you well know, you've commentated for years on this beautiful sport, that how dramatically you know, it's just cruel. And all it takes is a touch of wheels, and you've gone from possible glory, to utter despair. But there we go.
In my opinion, the race win today will come from the current first couple of groups. Well, we're going to have a look at the crash again in a short while. It's not something I'm given to doing, but not until we know that everyone is... the blessing is that everyone's in safe hands, because this is an impeccably well-organised race. It'll be the same in Flanders as well. So when we do have incidents, at least they are well attended to, and for that we are grateful. This is the group from which I believe today's winner is going to come. 38 seconds is the gap that this secondary group have on the breakaway up the road. And with 61 kilometres remaining, we're still waiting to find out what the gap is back from this group, Group 2, to Group 3. I suggest it's quite big. Tiesjebanu, Mathieu Jorgensen, Stefan Kung, Alberto Bettiol, Valgren, Grondin and Vercouy. I suggest he may well be the dark horse. However, nonetheless, there's some fantastic names here. And with a gap that is holding steady for now, it's just because they're trying to sort out their work rate, essentially, within this group, what the pecking order is. But things seem to have come the way of Alberto Bettiol. You know, whenever there's a moment such as this, some people have some blessings. It's just luck. It's circumstance, as Matt was pointing out. And they've had that. Looking at a very strong group of 7 riders who are Group 2 on the road. Group 3 is a long, long way back because we've had a huge crash on a big moment of the day. And for those of you who may have missed it, because it is such an important action point of the day in the worst possible manner, then we're going to have a look at this crash again. All we can tell you is that we haven't got a condition check on the riders yet, but they are in good hands. And this was the moment, all bunched together, going at pace, and we believe possibly a gust of wind. Certainly there's a reflected, more rider than one seemed to veer at once. And then this, including Mark van Aert on the deck. Mads Pedersen hit the deck. Jesper Pedersen's gone to hospital. There's a few others as well. Benjamin Gamay has also been hospitalised. Whoever took a hit, you can see the bike still bouncing here. Whoever took a hit today, I'm afraid, is unlikely to be performing at their best, to say the least, in Flanders. And I'm afraid that it wasn't long before Wout van Aert was taken to the stretcher, and a few others as well. We wish them well, Matt.
Yeah, we do. We certainly wish them all the best. I just don't think we need to dwell on people who've actually put on a stretcher. But that's what happened. That is the nature, sadly, of our sport from time to time. And that's why we need to acknowledge just what these riders put themselves through.
Yeah.
You know, it's they're never very far away from possibly laying it down, as we know. And as you just alluded to, there is a lot of luck, especially when it comes to the classics as well. Yeah. They're so stressful. This is, you talk about the physical load, what it takes to get through a race like this, but the psychological demands, the stresses, the multiple change of direction, the demands of the team, the tactics, you're looking after a teammate, thoughts of victory, weather conditions, gusts of wind. There's so much to process dynamically, Carlton, that you're always on the very edge of possible disaster, and that's something that's not often spoken about. But here we are, we've got 10, maybe 12 riders who are out the race, some of the key riders. Let's wish them all the best. Let's hope that they can get up and dust themselves down and hopefully be racing in the next few days. But here we go. The race continues. 58 Ks to go, and we've still got a lot of action to come. We've still got 5 categorised climbs to come as well.
I know. It's almost, we're regathering ourselves, apart from anything else, just to sort of calibrate what we've witnessed here and to make the best of it. That is Josh Tarling, who's just set off time trially styly. We wish him the very best today. The Knottenberg is coming up next, the Côte de Trieux, which is usually the last and decisive key point, but now already comes with, what, 53 kilometres to go. It will be by the time we get there. And that will be where we start to head east with no descents until we actually get to the Hotond, which comes with 49.3 kilometres to go. Talk about picking yourself up and just trying to join the party. If there's anyone who can do that, it's Josh Tarling.
Oh, this is a good move. He's trying to jump across the gap, and just looking at the progress that he's making. I think this might be the time when Tarling went, not too sure. We're looking at a replay here, and this is the group behind that he's just left. Well, there's Tarling, actually. He just takes his chance, looks behind, there's a gap that's opened up. He looks around again and he's clear. And I tell you what, once Josh Tarling gets that motor revved up to speed, is very hard to bring back. And I do think, looking at what we've seen, he might actually bridge across. I think that's the moment he went.
Yeah,
just the group behind.
Change of tempo, and look, once the chase loses heart, even momentarily, then he's gone. And this is what he can do. You mentioned him early on, Matt, and as you did, I just drew an orange, which is the colour I use for time trialling, right across his name. And we were discussing time trialists, and you know, on a rough day like this could be glorious. So he's made it over. Now, this is impressive, to say the very least, because he's actually, the group he left is at 1 minute and 11 down on the break. He's just about to join the second group, who have a 30-second deficit. And this is the quality of the man. His problem is, he's got some pretty quick, dynamic riders around him as well. Those who can change pace rather than just invoke a constant one. So the best strategy for Josh Tarling is to do what he's just done now, much later. Can he do it, Matt?
It looks like he might. Well, he's there. There we
he
go.
Is, he's made it. Yeah.
It was one of those little moments. I mean, you can. again, one thing that's so important, an attribute to have as a bike rider, is the ability to follow a plan, and also the ability to seize moments when they're presented to you. It's that instinct that can't actually be taught. It's something you learn as just through racing more and more and more and looking at what other riders do. Some riders have a real good feel for a race, and that was clearly from the aerial shot. It was quite wonderful. We saw the evolution of this just small piece of a big jigsaw. So much has happened in this race today. There's going to be an enormous debrief, I think it's fair to say. But that little moment there, he was on the front, looked behind and thought, well, there's an opportunity here, and now he's put himself in a very good position. Still got to catch this move, but the strength that we have in that move now containing Josh Tarling, remember, he's only 20 years of age from down in Wales. That's a good move, and this is a strong move.
It is another pinch point, another transition, and you can see the sign there telling you that the road narrows. And check this out. What's that? Maybe 3 meters wide, I would suggest, as a maximum. Maybe 3.2 for the pedants amongst you, but nonetheless, it's very, very thin. I guess the only blessing from a crash is it has actually thinned down, and you're likely to get onto this road in a more appropriate manner, let's put it that way. This is Group 3, I believe, that we're looking at right now at 1 minute and 12, and there'll be a lot of riders here who, quite frankly, have missed the boat. And just looking through this group as well, there's a lot of teams, you know, that were cast asunder very, very early on. Is that Michael Matthews is within this group? I think it is for Jaco.
Michael Matthews, yeah, fourth wheel, just going around that corner. Quite easy to recognise that distinctive silhouette, the flowing locks of the man that finished so close in Milano-San Remo. He's in good form, but yeah, he's definitely sat fourth wheel there. But as you can see, a lot of the big teams are represented up in front in the initial breakaway, and then you've got that big move going across with Volgren and Bertiol and the rest, and there's no real clear organisation here at all. And the man in the national champs jersey of France, he's not going to chase because he's got Stefan Kung, so Madouas isn't going to chase. And because of how fractured the peloton was anyway at the point that we saw that large crash that took out Van Aert, Pedersen, Grumai, Kirsch, Sturven, to name but a few, this field is in pieces. So there's no real group with strength in number or the right coordinated number to actually do any proper chasing here. So the man on the front is Søren Kragh Andersen, and is getting no assistance whatsoever.
No, just sitting in is Michael Matthews, bringing up his desperate Jan Chin to the front, as you can see. Well, this is one of those days. Valentin Madouas of Groupama France-Associé wearing the French champions jersey, also mixing it up here. Just taking a toot further back, trying to see who it is from Israel Premier Tech, but they've got a lot of work to do. They're going to have to get themselves, as a fighting force, a more cohesive unit if they want to make an impact. This is Stefan Kung with this group only 26 seconds down on our breakaway, which started the day off, which contains Kasper Pedersen and the like as well. This is going to be quality up front. Now, the Group 3 here, as we just see tailing off out of that group, one of the Arkea boys is finding himself dispatched. Yeah, Group 3 needs to just calm itself down and actually start working together, because there's enough firepower here to bridge this gap. And in fact, it can offer up a chance. The trouble is they don't want to do too much work, because they know that they would then have a second job to do once they got further up the road. And therein lies the conundrum, Matt, which is an eternal one in this race. When do you impose yourself?
Exactly. That crash is... There's another big group coming behind. It's almost as if that big group behind joins forces, you can then have the road captains or who's left making a bit of a call. Okay, what do we do now? What teams that aren't represented up in front can we actually get some troops to try and get some sort of concerted chase up, because there's still a few big teams that missed it, and at this situation in the race with only 53 k's to go, they can't leave it too long. They can't wait another 20 k's to then start chasing. They've got to keep the pace up here. That's why we're seeing team leaders like Michael Matthews having to lean, put his nose in the wind and go for it, just to try and blow on the embers of hope here, just to try and keep this race alive before we get a swelling of the group behind, and then we can get some real clear decision making. So right now the pace has to be high, otherwise you're decreasing the hopes of actually bringing it back together even when you get organised.
Yeah, and then if you do one job, you've got another one to do once you actually get up to the front group. This is the remnants of our breakaway, which have come through the Knotterberg, the Côte de Trio. That's just over a kilometre in length, 7% as an average, 11.8% in total, and Josh Tarling at the back. What's an advantage to Josh is that the last of the climbs, which will be the Knockera, yeah, there's a little bit of respite before he gets that. In fact, some of the gaps between the climbs start to extend from just about now on in. The fourth of this sequence, this quartet of climbs that we've had, comes pretty quickly after this one, actually. In fact, they're almost immediately onto it. You can see they're just going to make some twists and turns a little bit further up. Peaks out at 49 kilometres to go, 1,200 metres in length. It's quite an easy one, the Hotonde. But some would say an action point again, that if you've got some ambitions, then when do you start to think about it? Because there's a long old gap then of possibly 10 or 12 kilometres. I think that's the biggest gap that we'll have between climbs still to come. There's another one between the Knockeraberg and the Knockera late on of about the same kind of margin. Just getting back in, that was Jonathan Milan was stamping on the pedals, knowing that Pedersen's gone. He's somebody else that could have an option, but unfortunately is out of position big time. Yeah. Is that Corbin Strongers with him?
No, that's Riley Sheehan. I think that's, Riley Sheehan, the American who took out Parry Tour last year.
You're right.
And you can just see how fractured this is. Vega State Langen just pushing this little group through as well. These are a couple of minutes down. Tim Wellens, there's some big riders that have missed the split. Bear in mind, this group of riders and the group just behind were actually already detached when that crash happened. We had probably 5 or 6 groups on the road, so still a lot of riders a long way back. I can't see these sorts of groups actually getting back in contention. The racing is properly on. In fact, let's be fair, Carlton, it's been on since we've come on. We'd long gone are the days of tradition when it was just a steady build-up to a frenetic finale. I mean, we get an hour in and then it's all guns blazing for the best part of 4 hours. The sport has just changed so much. I think it's changed. It's so exciting, thrilling to watch. It's not without its dangers, but boy, is it unpredictable. I
think, Matt, it's actually changed post-COVID, because we never knew whether we were going to get another lockdown. And so riders had to take their chances, impose themselves as whenever they can, and strategy kind of went out the window, and a whole new pace was put onto the peloton. And ever since then, it's not every man for himself, it's every team for themselves. And quite frankly, if you can make your opponents suffer with pace, then that seems to be an ever increasingly important tool in the kit box, if you will. The pace of racing has really cranked up. I don't know whether it's because of, nutrition, training, all the rest of it. And in fact, fewer racing days and more training days. So sort of a specific calendar that they're taking on. But Matt, there's no doubt about it. This has been one of the fastest years of racing that we've seen. And of course, we've seen the impact of it today.
Yeah. It's been, as you say, it is definitely. I think you can draw a line in the virtual sand in relation to COVID. I think pretty much all the pros I've spoken to on that very topic, Carlton, have agreed. And also thrown into the mix is these new generation riders, your Wout van Aerts, your Mathieu van der Poels, your Tadej Pogacars, who have the capacity to open up a race early. So teams have had to reconfigure. Even the idea of feeding on the road, the nutritional strategy has changed and is almost unrecognisable from 5 years ago in terms of the amount of fuel a rider can take on. That in turn has informed racing programme, the ability or recovering in between races as well. So the landscape has changed dramatically. But for us, for the fans, it's certainly spectacular and exciting to watch. There's still the few dominant riders that you always get, but as you say, this fast, frenetic pace with the races opening up far earlier certainly makes our job easier as a commentator, isn't it? There's not a lot of downtime as a commentator now, and I say that from the comfort of my chair at home. I mean, blimey, the stress score, the training score of the riders on these races now is exceptionally high. As we look at Nils Pollitt flicking his elbow, not a lot of teammates behind. There's Jasper Philipsen actually just on the wheel of the former German champion. So there's a little bit of organising here. Group 2 at 21 seconds. Yeah, they've got to do something.
Well, Degenkolb's also here. He's the one who looks like he's got some chewing tobacco inside of his cheek. Don't go there, kids. It's not healthy at all. And in fact, it's not a gel, it's something hard. He's having a biscuit. Having a chat back is Victor Campenaerts. Yeah, Jasper Philipsen make it over to this group. It's the group with Michael Matthews. And I guess with a bit of collective firepower and belief, they can charge on. But the problem for them is, out front is an amazing group now. And, you know, these are no buskers. Casper Pedersen, Dries Puter, Dries de Bont, the Drieses are up there. Pascal Ekholm, Abrahamsen and Gashinara stayed with it, I must admit, from Total Energies. But joining them any moment now, Thijs Benoot, Matteo Jorgensen, that's two quality athletes from Visma Lease Bike in the absence now, unfortunately, of Wout van Aert. He's there. Stefan Kung has made the trip. That's another great choice, actually. And in fact, talk about opening your classics account brilliantly, you might say. Well, he did so at E3. He was there or thereabouts. Milan San Remo, you know, he was within the pack, 23rd. And you think, well, why is that worth mentioning? Because it shouldn't have been his kind of day. This might be for Stefan Kung. And he's got a great opportunity right now. As has Alberto Bettiol, Michael Valgren in support of Bettiol. That's got to be a good thing. And EF Education are just having a laugh. Josh Tarling, no laughing matter for him. He bridged over brilliantly to this to the chasing group, Group 2, of high quality with Norsgaard, Amund Janssen. We've got Madouas and Verkuy, who fell out of the front group. They've now been absorbed by this chase group, which includes Jasper Philipsen and indeed Michael Matthews. John Degenkolb as well, seeing what Josh Tarling did and thinking, I could have done that once. Can he do it this time? I don't know. That's what's brilliant about today. If you accept and park up what's been so tragic about today, and that's the loss of some great names from this race and maybe from Flanders on Sunday. Dig in, why don't you? And you know what? Not afraid to do any work is Alberto Bettiol. He has constantly come to the front and imposed himself. He and Stefan Kung. This is a way of saying, Matt, I'm prepared to do some work, and for that, you know, the others can be grateful. It's a modicum of trust and alliance that has to be formed now, doesn't it, for this group?
Yeah, it's they've been slightly fortunate, but that's bike racing. We talk about the element of luck. It always plays a part. Pretty much every race, for lots of riders, there's an element of luck, and that's happened today. But you've got to have good legs to be in the front of a race, regardless of luck. And it's great to see, especially Michael Valgren at the front, the sharp end of a big bike race once more. No stranger to that is Bettiol, is just rolling through with Thijs Benoot. A conversation there. This is back to the front. They're slowly coming back to terms, aren't they, with this group in front? 22 seconds now. Just shows as well, Carlton, doesn't it, the importance. You talk about these early breakaways that quite often have no real hope. What they of course do is provide us with a bit of a spectacle. It also means that the teams up in front don't have to chase behind. But also, as we saw in this very race last year, quite often, well, not quite often, but from time to time, if you're willing to have a hard day out in front, you avoid all the chaos behind. And so much chaos has happened behind. These guys are still at the front of the race with 46 Ks to go. They're still there. And given the profile, okay, we've got quite a punchy profile on the run into the line. It's quite probable that not so much the winner, but one of these riders here, a couple of could finish inside the top 10 in this race as well. So fortune does favour the brave, especially this new way of racing. And they're at the front, they're still dictating the pace, and the gap is still 25 seconds. So fair play to every single one of these riders who's put themselves out in front today.
Yeah, good for them. The Maria Borastrat is rapidly approaching. It's 2.4 kilometres in length. And this will be the second time that we've taken it on today. It's a pavé section, so cobbles is what we're going to be dealing with, and as I say, it goes on for nearly 2.5 kilometres. So this is, had it been wet, I think this would have had a moderating impact. Right now these guys are going to take it at pace. As Matt was saying, they've been out there for quite some time and they've held a margin rather nicely. It's only 26 seconds. There's no reason while they're busy circulating so well for them to hold up. And I've got a feeling that this group actually has just dialed it back a little bit. I don't think they're waiting for the big pack behind them. They're actually just biding their time. They've done a lot to close this down to 26 seconds. And you can't be fully on it all the time because basically you'll just run out of juice, quite frankly. There's 8 chasing 6 at the moment, and the 8 have had a big session. They've got themselves under 30 seconds. It was down to 22 as a margin, I think. And this is the pickup, and this is the chase that you're looking at right now. And still to be quantified, this group. This is the peloton, what remains of it, declared as peloton, Group 3. John Degenkolb was here, so is Michael Matthews. That is Jasper Philipsen, who's just riding into the void. There's a few others that have made the trip here. Chris Nylance has also made it up. De Klerk has been given the get-go because Mads Pedersen crashing heavily earlier on. Jesper Stuyven is out. Jonathan Milan, I'm afraid, is out of position and not part of that group. Meanwhile, the two front groups are likely to come together. They are at 27 seconds margin. Now, in that secondary chase group, we have Thijs Benoot, Jorgensen, Matthew Jorgensen, Stefan Kung, Bettiol, Valgren, Tarling, Norsgaard and Janssen. That is a huge raft of talent, and we're sailing with them right now. This is Thijs Benoot just reaching for a gel. That is Alberto Bettiol. Now, he seems to be chomping at the bit today. This looks like a favour to Michael Valgren, to be fair, within this group, because Bettiol is, every time we've gone to that group, Bettiol's been on the nose. He's not afraid, is he, Matt?
No, he'll be more than comfortable in this position, especially with that big win the other day in Italy. It was nothing short of spectacular. It really was. That's what 30 seconds looks like at that sort of speed on the road. So it's still a nice gap. They're just moving into that little cobbled section that you were talking about. The Maria Borestrat. Here it is. Second time today. He's looking at the wind direction. They've got a bit of a headwind on it at the moment. You could just see the wind with the Newsblad signs on the right-hand side. The wind coming actually over the right shoulder. Here's that second group behind. But I think, just to talk about Bettiol for a second, I think Bettiol will be the favoured son out of that team at the moment. But I think Valgren, you just never know. He can use Valgren as a foil. Well, there you go, a whole runway, Carlton, in between the next group containing Jasper Philipsen. You could probably possibly take a light aircraft off on that one.
That's Milan just coming up. He's made it over. That's him for Israel Premier Tech. Can't quite see who he is with. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Tom Squinch who's actually found himself out of position and wants to be part of it as well. So they've relayed brilliantly. If it's those two, we'll find out in a moment.
Milan's in the group already, and that was Scoins coming across. I did see Milan towards the back of the group, so Little Trek have now got two in that chase group once Scoins gets on.
Right, well, let's wait and see. If you want to know how rough this is, always look at wrists and elbows. They're basically your shock absorbers at moments such as this. And here is that quality group with two just about to join, tantalisingly off the back of it. They've got a chance to sort of just hold off on the braking here, lean it in. I say that tentatively as well because we've had so many bumps and bruises today. That's putting it mildly. Still waiting for condition check, I'm afraid, on those who would be back to health, we hope, soon. Abramson it is that kicks off here, just tries to offer up a little bit of encouragement maybe to those further back. This is Casper Pedersen, just plonked at the rail. Econ just in front of him. Number 65 here, that's Dries de Puter. Dare I say it, this group, Casper Pedersen, yes, possibly Abramson, but honestly, the real firepower is just coming over. And they won't really relish the company. In fact, so much so they've kicked on just a little bit. And here is that group. That's Amund Janssen. This nearest to us is Matthias Norsgaard. Josh Tarling is at the front of this group at the moment, pacing them. Now, he bridged over on his own. We know all about his time trialling capabilities, and he's got to recalibrate how he's going to beat some of the real punchy riders who are sitting around him. Meanwhile, this group, a whole phalanx of talent, is now riding its way into consideration. They're a minute and 29 down on the leaders and a minute off that considerable chase group that we thought might contain today's winners. I still believe that, even though we've got 41 kilometres to go, Matt.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there are some big teams that have missed it. One of the teams that aren't represented, and that's where they're riding on the front to NLG, although they've actually got a man in this front group, which is a little bit weird. I think they're just trying to give themselves more of a chance to actually chase down that secondary group and maybe restart the racing. So there's no real point in riding on the front, one could argue. Also a team that have missed it, Alpecin de Koning. That's where we saw Jasper Philipsen and Søren Kragh Andersen riding. And another big team that have had, a couple of podiums in the cobbled campaign so far, and that's UAE Team Emirates. It looks like they've got Mark Hershey and Niels Pollitt in this group. Niels Pollitt, of course, second in Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and clearly going well. But this is the group that I think has got the most to gain. But right now, with 41 Ks to go, the front group is actually moving in front. You wonder if there's a little bit of a tactical play here. Bettiol maybe looking at Jorgensen,
of course,
and also Josh Tarling probably been told not to do too much. I mean, we know how classy Tarling is, but he's never been at the sharp end of a classic like this, Carlton. So Christian Canesian, the team car, is going to have to say, look, make sure you're just holding a little bit back. Watch it. Don't give too much away, because they'll look to you because of your engine. Hold a little bit back. And that combination of factors behind, given the fact that we're focusing on Group 2 as the favourites, means that they might not be just giving it too much at the moment and maybe be keeping a watchful eye on each other. Taichi Benut, you've got to factor in there as well.
They've got to put enough in the bank, Matt, as the chasing Group 2 to hold off those who will try and close the gap from the peloton, which is sitting a minute further behind them. They can't basically try and snuff out this group. They're going to have to hope that there's not enough firepower up here. Don't forget there's Casper Pedersen as part of this group and a few other talents as well. They're playing a moderating game because this group is what they fear. So as a result, the gap is actually closing between the Matthews group, am I allowed to call it that, the Matthews and the Matthews and indeed Philipsen group. They, in the Group 2 at the moment, they cannot invoke all of their talents to close down the front of the race just yet, but they will. It's at their choice, I think. Group 2, I think, are in the bird seat today. Next it's about moderation, isn't it, Matt? You can't play all your cards at once.
Yeah, this is the climb of the La Dures. This is climb number 10. This tops out with 38 k's to go, as you can see. Bob on, 39 k's to go now, so it's about 900 metres long, and it is quite steep. It goes up to third, and there, that looks like the start of the Strava section, and there's a giant Lidl pear just on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, a little bit too big to put in your back pocket. They won't be thinking of that one, but they can just see them up ahead. I'm just wondering at what point we'll see any of the riders behind start to attack. Are they confident they're going to gradually eat into the lead of this group in front? I would say they are, but soon one or two riders from this group is going to have to attack and try to take things into their own hands. The likes of Bettiol, the likes of Stefan Kung, the likes of Taichi Benut and Jorgensen, as Norsgaard now starts to struggle at the back of the group. Unsurprisingly, he's been in front all day.
Yep. They're trying to break the heart of the peloton behind them, so they allow them to believe and then they kick on again. Interesting. That's the difference between Matt Stevens and myself. Matt sees a pair and thinks, oh, put that in my back pocket. I see a pair and I think, crumble. Anyway, La Dures, 1,200 metres to go, 5.6% with a maximum of 11. And after this, it goes again through Oudenaarde, the target town, of course, for the Tour of Flanders, the outskirts of which we're playing with today. It's like a bouche à mouse for the big feast. And check this out as well. This gap is now starting to just close, and Tarling looks like he's not got any respite, but I'm afraid he's just been tagged off a little bit here. This is about moderation of energy. His unfortunate circumstance, I think, is the climbs. However, there are some big gaps between them. So if he can show now what he needs to show later on, which is ability to stay with it and get back in. There is the coming together of the two front groups, and I think this is, they're shaking out Tarling and they thought, well, let's kick on just a little bit, because they must fear him from distance. Those games have to be played almost constantly. So you've got two teams, two time trial teams essentially coming back together right now, and this is now become a very effective fighting force. And Matthews knows it. He's had to kick on, and this is one of the men that they will surely have feared. He's going for it. Campenaerts is actually within the vanguard here as well. Few others likewise. Anthony Turgis not that far off the front, looking back further through this group, trying to see who else might indeed try and fight their way through. Great time for Matthews to go, but he's got to do a Tarling, and that's going to cost him later on. Yeah,
it's a big gap. It's Jonathan Milan on the front for Lidl Trek. Fair play to him, but Michael Matthews knows quite simply that time and tarmac is running out. He's got to do something. Okay, he's taking a risk here. He's going to have to try and bridge this across, but when you attack on a climb, quite often you'll draw a rider with you so you can try and bridge across. He's got to try something, and clearly felt deep down that this group wasn't going anywhere. There was ceding time to the group out in front. The front of the race has now come together, and there is the composition. And just to touch on Josh Tarling, the main thing for him, and it coming from the team car, is not to panic. He's one of the heaviest riders in the field. He's a man of stature, big engine, but on the steep climbs, it's just physics isn't going to be in his favour. But he's just not got to panic and try and TT his way back into the mix, and just hope that he can survive. Maybe stay at the front of the group on the climbs to give himself a bit of sliding space, but don't write out Tarling yet. But saying that, this group is now moving very rapidly.
Problem for Darling is the last climb comes with 9.2 kilometres to go. That will be the knockerer at the very last. Wish him well. ...37 kilometres from home, and now the peloton is 93 seconds. Doesn't sound too much. There's Oudenaarde, the famous square with the Star Wars bar in it as well, where the stars went to war, and somebody gave away Eddie's pint to Sean. Sean just drank it. Eddie came out the loos and said, "Where's my drink?" Oh, they were all that day. It was absolutely magnificent. It was a privilege to be within that bar, and every turn you would see another superstar of old. Greg was in there as well. I'll let you fill in the family names. You know them. Teespenot, Jorgensen, Kung, Pedersen, De Putte, Bettiol, Valgren. Oh my goodness! De Bont, Inkorn, Abramson, and Gachinard. The winner today, I think, is going to come from this group. We've been saying it for a while. They've merged, so this phalanx of gunslingers have actually joined the fun here, and we've now got a very, very tight group who could make it all the way with 36 to go, Matt.
Yep, 36 to go and only 2 more climbs. You've already talked about the final 2 climbs at Nokkerenberg. That comes at 21.3 k's to go. We've got another section of cobbles, the Heist Pontweg. That comes at 26.9. So we've got a bit of a flat section here before the next cobbled section, and then the final 2 climbs. Nokkerenberg at 21.3 k's to go, and then finally, as you've mentioned a few times, but it's worth mentioning again, could be the crucial point, remember, the climb at Nokkere. It's not the biggest climb in the world at 9.2. There is Tarling. He's TT'd his way back. He was patient. It went out to 15 seconds as now Milan joins forces with Michael Matthews, knowing that the best chance of getting across is like with 2 or 3 here. But
he exchanges and then goes, hang on, corner. Oh, dear. Oudenaarde, thank you. It's hello and goodbye, but see you at the weekend, Matt.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we should go past the Flanders Museum. What a wonderful, wonderful town this is. It's as you can see, there's the big town hall. There's bars left, right and centre. That's the museum just on the corner there. I've spent numerous wonderful times in. If you're watching this footage wherever you are in the world and you're enjoying it, you've never been to Belgium, get yourself over. You will not regret it.
It is, to my mind, the best racing day on the calendar. It's the high point and the finale of an amazing festival of racing, of which today is very much part, the Dwars door Vlaanderen, and it's with a great deal of affection that indeed we get to enjoy this. So I'm going to ask you who your pick is from the group, Matt.
Oof, okay, put me on the spot. Bettiol.
I'm with you. I can't see by him in this group. There is a conundrum for those who are chasing. They've 1 minute and 27 down on a group that now they have coagulated. They've come together. Josh Charling's made his way back in after the climb. There he is, just one off the rear at the moment. Casper Pedersen just bringing up the rear. But this group now, it has come together. It was the chasers. Post-crash, they were allowed off the leash and they went for it. They were already racing. Alberto Bettiol is both the pick of Matt and myself from this group. He's looking so feisty. He's absolutely back to his best. I imagine odds are tumbling as we speak for him for Flanders, because wins breed wins, especially with Bettiol, it seems. He won Flanders back in 2019 as a rank outsider, but Sean Kelly backed him for that day and came in big time. I think he enjoyed a big weekend off the back of it. He's just won Milan Torino in a spectacular way, and he's been there or thereabouts so often. 5th in Milan San Remo. In Etoile Bessèges, he finished 3rd overall. Started off strongly in the Gavia. This is a man who's absolutely on form, and within this group, I think he's your man. 1:29. It depends what happens with the chase. Michael Matthews can't get any kind of support at the moment because everyone fears going with him, with good reason. And he's got Jonathan Milan as well, trying to invoke some kind of alliance, but the two of them can't drag everyone else up. And it looks solid at 1.5 minutes as a deficit to this group, where I think the winners will come from, Matt.
Yeah, it looks good. There's still a lot of fight here. One rider I'm I'm always impressed with is Dries de Bont. We've already seen him. They've been caught for the last 5k or so. De Bont still happy to roll through. He knows he's in with a good chance now. And remember, the distance of this race. Yeah, he's got a kick, but he's also, I would say, out of all the riders here, him and Bettiol, I think, are two of the most intelligent riders in this group as well. So he'll rest, he'll do a little bit on the front, he won't cheese anybody off. So you've got to look at the composition of the group, think about teams with multiple riders. There's only 2 teams in here with 2 riders. It's Visma Lease Bike have 2 in there, as we know. Jorgensen is there with Tish Benoot, and the other team with 2 Michael Bulgren and Alberto Bettiol for EF Education Easy Post. So you've just got to make sure that you've got eyes on everybody here, and don't write off any of the riders also in that breakaway. Don't take anything for granted. Be sharp. That's what this is all about. But I think the likes of Jorgensen and Bettiol are going to shake things up on the coming climbs. Remember, there's only 2 climbs to go. But I tell you what, if I was Jorgensen, if I was Bettiol, I wouldn't want to take the likes of Casper Pedersen to the finish, because on paper, the man from Soudal Quickset is probably the quickest in this group, although he has been away all day. So there's so many different permutations, so much to think about here, Carlton.
It is, it's fabulous. We spoke to Alberto Bettiol before today. Both Matt and I independently thought about James Bond, and I've just realised there's a double O in his name. So that makes sense. Bettiol and, of course, Alberto. So, yeah, will the Italian, the name's Bettiol, Albert Bettiol. If he wins, I can't wait to hear the post-race chat from him. Still waiting for condition checks on the Fallen, I'm afraid. Unlikely to get those anytime soon, but some big names, I'm afraid, crashing out of this race, including Mads Pedersen, Wout van Aert. I think Pedersen did remount, but Jesper Stuyven, I'm afraid, off to hospital. Likewise, Biniam Girmay. Just really not nice scenario at all, to say the very least. And unfortunately, it means I don't think we're going to be seeing Wout van Aert or possibly Mads Pedersen, but definitely not Wout van Aert or Biniam Girmay, and certainly not Jesper Stuyven in Flanders this weekend, which is a real shame for all cycling fans everywhere. And we wish them just the best and fondest regards, and hope they get back soon. So, time to make your exchanges and get yourself ready for action. And if you've missed out, then how do you make amends now? The gap's widening, Matt.
Yeah, it's going out 1 minute and 40 seconds. And you could almost sense a little bit of despondency in the group behind. We saw a couple of riders rolling through. Jonathan Milan taking his little turn on the front. A good ride as well from the Little Trek rider, Tom Schoyens, also rolling through. But just by their facial expressions and just by the speed they were moving, there was a lot of despondency there. And I think with only 30 Ks to go and the gap now at 1 minute and 40 seconds and still real cohesion here. Unsurprisingly, 1 or 2 of the riders are sitting on. Thomas Gachinal on the back there for Total Energy. For him, if I was his DS, it's like, do not do a turn. Just hang on as long as you can. You might roll a top 10. And then there's the likes of Casper Pedersen, Dries de Bont, who are rolling through as well. There is cohesion here. But there are a lot of tired legs in this group, especially the men that have been out in front all day, including Pascal Encorn, Dries de Bont as well. Josh Tarling has got to make sure he stays there as well. Doesn't do too much because he will, out of all of these riders, fear the climbs the most. And then Thijs Benoot and Jorgensen, Kung, Bettiol, Volgren, they are going to be thinking, along with their DSs, how are we going to win this bike race? And we've got 30 kilometres to go to do that. And that group, I wouldn't say, are bearing down behind. They've got to make sure they keep enough pace in the groups that they don't throw it all away. But I think with 30 Ks to go, 1 minute 40 is a buffer. They've got enough in hand. But at what point will we see attacks? It might not even come on the climbs. Sometimes the smart money is to attack when you're least expected. And that's in between. As we look at another little chase group. This is the group that was just in between. They're the riders that have been dropped, I think, aren't they? I think that's Norsgaard and Janssen who are just in between.
Well, take your pick, quite frankly. Let's wait and see. There's so much firepower here. We've got a couple of good time trialists as well, don't forget. Stefan Kung and Josh Tarling might actually just have a little bit of a should we go for it? Should we just shake them out? Let's wait and see. Shaking now, shaking the bones. We are now dealing with a difficult pavé section. This is the Duron, and you're thinking, well, they're all difficult, aren't they? No, some are smoother than others, and this is quite rough. If you look at elbows, those who are fighting to just decide to go a bit cyclocrossy, why don't you? And then didn't want to stay there for too long. That was interesting. Just drifted off the side there, Casper Pedersen, thought, no, that's far too rough. You can see they really don't want to play with it. Well, it's I guess the only blessing is that it doesn't last too long, 900 metres in length. Incidentally, this is what all the roads used to be like back in the day. And the reason was, with such heavy rain, they're unfounded. So the stairs, as they actually call them, these big chunks, cut with hard labour, by the way. If you were sent to prison, that's what you had to do, cut those in a quarry, and they were set into the earth. So heavy were they that they remained moderately stable, and the horses could get a good purchase. Meanwhile, this man's had a good purchase as well. Casper Pedersen wrestling to get back in.
To see
that hurt, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he got detached. It was riding on the packed dirt on the right-hand side, but that was a real illustration, Carlton, of how hard they're going at the front. We saw Jorgensen rolling through, making it look easy, but for somebody who's been out in front all day, that was hard. It was almost a full gas sprint just to get back in the wheels. A stark illustration about how hard they are, how quick they are moving, and how hard it is now to stay in the wheels, especially if you're fatigued.
Well, of this front group, Alberto Bettiol has done so in the past, and he finds himself in a very privileged position. They've knocked it back. Now, what's this about? A bit of a fracturing at this juncture, and we have just dealt with the Huizer Pontweg out there, or just about to, 26.9. In fact, it's a moderate climb, this one, 1,600 metres in length. If you're in a breakaway, this is often described as a point where you might stretch your legs. Unfortunately, it's a stretch too far for some, especially those who've been up the road for much of the day, Matt.
Yep, we saw it with Stefan Kung just leading on. There he is on the front. Kung has just put in a turn, just a massive turn on the front here, not giving anybody any shelter. Bettiol opting for the dirt. It's a little bit more, it's a kind of risk and reward situation here. I mean, they'll be running pretty wide tyres on a course like this anyway. So look at that. Stefan Kung just forcing everybody, quite literally on that occasion, into the gutter, because he's got such a big engine. You're trying to fight for that little bit of shelter, and you either ride in the wind, Carlton, or you opt for riding in the dirt. I mean, that's a big surge, that was.
Yeah, it is a big surge, and look at the gap that's opened up as well. Josh Tarling fighting to stay with, and Kung has really decided to invoke the motor. This is fantastic. Stefan Kung then currently in wheel 2, and a shakeout has happened, and all credit to Jonas Abrahamsson, who's still with it. Meanwhile, Michael Valgren has said cheerio to his teammate. Bettiol's in that front group at quartet with 26 to go, and he's just chasing onto the wheel of Josh Tarling, our time trialist. You're seeing another time trialist on the nose setting the pace. There's Bettiol, both a pick for Matt and myself. And that group now with Dries de Bon, who you quite rightly said he needs to be considered, is also very much part of that group. He's a good climber as well. He needs to attack when it comes to that last little test. Last climb today, we remind everybody, Matt, comes with 9.2 kilometres to go, and nearly dealt with all of our climbs today.
Yeah, we've just got the Nokraberg, haven't we? So that comes in 5Ks. But look at Tarling almost on the back. Tish Benoot has been fighting tooth and nail to get back in contact. Tarling still there on a huge gear. Benoot gets onto the wheel of Abrahamsson. I've been massively impressed by the man from Norway. But he's had a good Classics campaign so far. 12th in E3 Saxo Bank, top 20 in Ghent Wevelgem. But again, has made it hard by getting in that early move. As we see this man riding at about 60, 70 RPM, just using that high torque, low cadence technique that only this man can. Doesn't like the climb so much, but I tell you what, get him on the flat and he's back in contact again. This is tenacious riding by Tarling.
I'm actually looking at how quickly he gets on. Josh Tarling keeps getting distanced on the climbs, and then guess what, he makes his way back on. And that bodes well for him a little bit later. Let's see. There's a lot of engines here, and there's a lot who are quicker out of the blocks, you might say, once we unwind our final few twists and turns that will bring us to the line. Stefan Kung has just spent some resources to get out front and try and shatter this group, and he hasn't shaken out those he fears. Staying with him was Bettiol, that was gutsy. Also, the retrieval capabilities of Tarling you have to admire. Now, Matt, the last of our climbs is 9.2. Presumably, Tarling is going to fall off the back then. He's then got some pave, which we've just been over now. You'll have to deal with that with 6.3 kilometres to go. Is that enough time for him to get back in and impose himself, or does he need to go before then?
I think Tarling needs to buy himself a little bit of time, ideally build himself a little bit of a lead. This is I mean, looking at the type of rider he is, the way he's riding at the moment, he needs to open up a gap of 15-20 seconds before the climb of Nogueira, lose a bit of time, and then hopefully for him TT it to the finish. But it's going to be a hard ask, I think, because the strongest man at the moment, or the man that's okay, there's a different thing here. There's the strongest man and there's the man who's hiding himself and not playing his cards pretty close to his chest. At the moment, Stefan Kung is showing his hand, but he knows he needs to thin this group out. He's not the quickest rider at the finish, and is wanting to make sure that he firstly tires these riders out, makes the group a little bit more easier to manage. Remember, he's on his own as well. He's got no allies at all there, and there's two riders there from the men in yellow, Team Visma-Lease, like Tish Benoot, who was distanced. That's quite interesting. He was distanced, and Matteo Jorgensen. So Dries de Bont at the back, cannily on the last wheel. He forced Josh Tarling in front of him to close the gap. That was smart. So the smartest man in this move could actually be the man on the back, and I think Alberto Bettiol, but difficult to actually think of who's going to win this one right now. It's a pretty evenly matched, but still 24k to go, and there's some action behind as well. Still Jonathan Milan willing to force the pace.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of ground to make up, I'm afraid. It's nearly 2 minutes now, so if he was going to do this, why didn't it happen earlier? Well, it's a question of who's riding with you and what you've got to offer up in partnership with them. Milan started off in many books, mine included, as amongst the favourites. Got caught out by the crash that thankfully didn't hit the deck, but found himself unfortunately out of shape and out of position. And right now he's got a long way to go, 23 kilometres to solo close this gap. Well, unless there's other riders, and there are out there for him to bridge to, I'm not quite sure what alliances will form. This group now are starting, whatever Matt and I are saying, it's trying to think our way through how this might pan out, is nothing compared to the brain power that these guys are expending. And that indeed has a calorific impact. They need to put the gels in so they can think straight apart from anything else. But I think this group is where we're going to find our winners. We've been saying it for a while. But what kind of winner? Would it be a time trialist, a hard man, a quick man? Maybe a combination of all three. I think Bettiol starts now, if you're only just joining us, as favourite, as if he wasn't at the beginning of the day, at least in the vanguard. But of this group, he looks great in pink here, Matt.
Yeah, he does. And just see that gentle helping hand on the back of Tarling. Again, if you get on the wheel of Tarling, it's smart because you've got so much more shelter. So these tiny little details about manoeuvring riders in a breakaway so you've got more shelter when you're rolling through, that's a really small nuanced piece of riding there, but it's worth giving somebody a little bit of a shove if then you're going to save an extra 15 or 20 watts or even more sat on their wheel, because Tarling is by far the biggest rider in that group and offering up the most shelter as we hit towards Nogueira. Remember, we've got the Nogueira coming up now, actually.
There we go. It's now. He's leaving him behind. He doesn't want any kind of company. And this is Alberto Bettiol seeing a camera bike and thinking, I'll have a bit of that. Matteo Jorgensen it is that goes after him. Thijs Benoot is just holding back. He's going to wait to see who goes. And Bettiol has, frankly, flown the coop. This is absolutely magnificent. From distance, Bettiol taking control. Wahlgren was off the back. This is others starting to struggle. Tarling, I'm afraid, on this rise is just struggling to stay with it. That's Jorgensen who's not going to drag, I don't think, Tarling up towards the front. Now thinking I need to just shake off Tarling. Thijs Benoot has set off after him. Stefan Kung was doing an awful lot of work out there, but Bettiol now needs to settle himself into his own rhythm, quite frankly. He's not a bad time trialist in his own right. He's got a lot of tools in the kit, but right now the biggest thing that's got going for him is belief, and he's shown plenty of that, Matt. He's gone.
He's gone. He's absolutely flown. It's a big attack. It's actually Jorgensen is following him, and this is Thijs Benoot just off the back with who Tarling is chasing. So that attack, I mean, if you look back to that attack that we saw in Milano Torino, different terrain but similar. The ferocity. It's such a big attack. I mean, that's the sharpness. He's really. I mean, okay, he's not quite gone clear. We're going to get a look at that again. Up the inside, again, super smart, carrying a lot of pace. Went from 4 or 5 back. And just look at the acceleration. situation here. There's nothing anybody can do about it. And also out of the saddle as well. So you've got to make sure that you distribute the weight. If you're going to ride out of the saddle on the cobbles, you've got to have a real art and a craft of making sure that you're not losing power by the back wheel skipping. So he did that right. But I just think the climb was a little bit too short. It was only 400 metres long, but still, we've only got one more climb to go. Two more cobbled sections. We've got two forays into the Hergmiller Strat, which comes at 19 k's to go, so in 2 k's time, then again at 6.3, and one more climb at Knockera. But all the biggest climbs now are done, Carlton, so that climb at Knockera isn't too steep at all.
19.1 is when we'll hit the foot of it. It is 800 metres in length, virtually no gradient really. It's a pavé section, the Heil Gemmerstadt. Then we have the Knockera. Now, they always say about climbs, we always say about climbs, it doesn't matter what the percentages are, it's as difficult as indeed you make it, and it will be made difficult. 9.2 kilometres out, 750 metres only. It might well feel like an Alp, quite frankly. 5.7% as an average, 6.7% as a maximum. I think here Tarling has got a lot on his plate, quite frankly, to not only close this gap, because he's not going to get any help at all by the man who's riding with him. Mario Jorgensen is up front here in the yellow, and his teammate Tiespenut is there just riding along with Josh Tarling, who he knows is going to try and close into this gap. Look at the way that Alberto Bettiol, he's like a poker player. You cannot read him at all. He's got the most amazingly solid face. I'm waiting to see what he offers us towards the end. Stefan Kung is the man who was the original driving force before Bettiol almost had back wheel chatter, didn't he, as he leant into the corner on the cobbles there. And yet more of these pinch points coming up, Matt. It's a story still to be told, this.
Indeed. Well, this is the penultimate cobbled section. They actually go over this twice. So we've got a little loop that we'll be entering on, about 6 or 7k loop near the finish. But this is the first time that we'll traverse this particular section. It is the man on the front flicks his elbow. Stefan Kung looks around, but there was a bit of a shake of the head. Was this a puncture from Bettiol?
Oh, absolute disaster.
It is.
Afraid,
oh, that is awful luck.
What a terrible thing. Bettiol just coming to the side of the road, can't quite see where the issue is. Is it front or back? Let's have a look. Full and swift bike change, but where's his car within the stack? He's not going to have to go neutral, is he? Shaking out his leg here. I'm actually wondering whether he's got a cramp.
I reckon he might have cramped up.
I think he is. He's got a cramp. Oh, nightmare. Well, I don't know whether that was a misfeed or maybe a pull. I do not know. He went from 0 to hero and back straight down again. And you just wonder whether he's pulled something. Let's wait and see. But Bettiol is out of the frame. My goodness. So he was absolute favourite within that group. And I'm afraid he's just... Has he injured himself on the stretch?
I mean, I was trying to look at his tyres because he was moving back so quickly.
Right.
I mean, that they did look like they were fully inflated, but the way he's dropped his leg off, he's clearly, one would imagine, either pulled a muscle or simply cramped up. And straight away, we've got Tiespenut gone to the front to make sure they snuff out any hope that the Italian Bettiol has got of getting back in contact.
Driver home, and I'm afraid it's a stake through the heart of Alberto Bettiol, who looks like he's pulled a muscle. He wasn't trying to stretch out a cramp when he came to the side of the road, hanging a leg. Let's wait and see. All of a sudden, now let's have a look at it. There he is, pulls to the side of the road.
Stops.
Now, no apparent puncture, but does unclip his left shoe, just hangs the leg, and I believe injured. Well, he's talking on the radio. Let's have a look. He's not actually done it just yet. Or maybe he was just getting ready for a change. I do not know. We shall wait and see at the end. But out of the frame, I'm afraid, with only 18 kilometres to go. That's a nightmare. In the bird seat here is Tiespenut and Matteo Jorgensen. Stefan Kung will be thinking of a long shot. Josh Tarling is still with it. This has completely upset the apple cart. Who's got a quick turn of pace? Who's going to be brave enough to take it on? And it started. They're battling each other, Matt.
Matteo Jorgensen, there is Bettiol still nursing, well, whatever the problem was. His team car's nowhere to be seen, still on his own, but Jorgensen has gone. Abrahamsen was forced to chase first, but now it should be on the shoulders of Stefan Kung, and this is where you've got to watch out for Dries de Bont. Dries de Bont, without a shadow of a doubt, the smartest, most canniest rider in this group. He has got to ride this smart if he's going to win this one. So he's sat on the wheel of Tarling again. Abrahamson's out the back. You've just got to watch. I don't think De Bont will do anything just yet, but watch out for him in the last couple of kilometres. But quite rightly, he is forcing Stefan Kung on the offensive. Tarling now on the wheel of Tish Benoot. So this is a fascinatingly balanced group, but Jorgensen has not managed to break the elastic. Just see if anybody counters or counters over the top. I think if this had been a group of nobody from the existing breakaway, we'd have a completely different story. So De Bont and Abrahamson are going to be ever so slightly fatigued as well, so don't expect them to go straight over the top. I think they'll be more than happy to try and maybe go for a sprint or leave it very, very late in the day to try and attack.
Abrahamson here is got a real turn of pace about him. I don't know if you remember the Tour de France last year into Bourg-en-Bresse. He was up there, and indeed he came very, very close. Kasper Asgreen took the day. Mads Pedersen was beaten by Abrahamson. Likewise, Jasper Philipsen. Kees Bol was up in the frame. You get the idea. We've virtually not mentioned him, and it's not because we don't rate him. It's just that we thought that this day was Alberto Bettiol's to lose. Unfortunately, he has lost out to an injury by the looks of things. 16 kilometres from home, and we have a sextet here of talent, and it can only be won by different riders here in different ways. They all want this to be a different kind of scenario. Kung and indeed Tarling want this to go long. Benoot, Jorgensen want this to kind of stay together but get tough, and the attacks rain in on the climb in the last pavé. And De Bont and Abrahamson would quite like a sprint, thank you very much. I'm backing Abrahamson, you know.
Yeah, I like you say that. Like Abrahamson and De Bont have got to be super, super smart here.
Yeah.
Abrahamson will be happy with the situation, but what he can't do too much of is being forced to shut the gaps. So, but also Josh Tarling can play the card. Well, I'm in this move. I'm not going to do too much. I've not really got much of a sprint compared to the likes of De Bont, for example. But I think if Jorgensen wants to win this one, or Thijs Benoot, they've got to go clear. They really have. But I think everybody else, Tarling, De Bont and Abrahamson, will be looking to Kung to shut it down. That's the dynamic in this group. If I was Tarling, I wouldn't chase anything myself. I really wouldn't. But again, I'm not there on the road with them. They've got to think for themselves. Just gently roll through. Just make sure that they don't throw this race away, because the gap is coming down now with 15 Ks to go. It's dropping down to 1 minute and 18 seconds. But I'm not too sure. Well, no, because we know that Bettiol has been caught by the rest of the group. So they don't want to throw this away now. So for the time being on this flat finishing circuit, they need to work together here. But I think it's going to be a very brittle alliance here, Colton.
It is very brittle. The only solid thing about it is going to be Thijs Benoot and Jorgensen. They're going to try to do the old 1-2 on the group. Kung and Tarling, whether they've actually discussed it or not, we just come by the trotting track here. They are going to have an undeclared alliance here, I think. Can they, or do they actually want to go together? That's the point. I'd suggest that Kung will get over the climbs better than Josh Tarling. So Tarling really is the lonesome figure here. He's the one who's going to have to dig deep and basically go for it. Now, does he go for it before the climb? That's the problem. I think he needs to hang on and then go for it before the pavé. We're going to find out. 14 kilometres to go. It's absolutely fascinating. So, Matt, you've gone for Dries de Bont. Am I guessing right out of this group? Who do you fancy? I think nail your flag. Come on.
Well, it's a difficult one. I think if it came down to a sprint, I might fancy Dries de Bont, who's now done another little turn on the front.
No, you've got to pick.
Actually, I'm going to go for Jorgensen solo.
I'm going to go for Abrahamson sprint. Anyway, let's see. It's going to fall to bits. They're both Abrahamson and indeed De Bont have been out there all day, for goodness sake. They have. I mean, maybe I'm talking myself out of it right now, but let's see. These guys, don't worry, they're going to be thinking of all the scenarios as well. Stefan Kung could win this. In fact, any of them could win it. That's what's so magnificent about our sport. And in fact, a day like today, it's a surprise by an unfortunate hand, I'm afraid, that we've got to this point. But Kung again is just decided to stretch himself. The big Swiss is hitting it all 1.93 meters. He's one of the heaviest guys here. Probably Tarling would argue with that. 194 and 78 kilos. No, Kung is the heavier. Thanks to Pro Cycling Stats for their weights. 13 kilometres. Not going to have to wait much longer, Matt, because we're cruising towards the next helling. It's Nockera.
Yep, Nokra, that comes at 9.2k, so roughly 4 kilometres till that climb. A little bit of a flick of the elbow, a nervous flick of the elbow there, and that came with a glance behind as well. Matteo Jorgensen, again, a very quick flick of the elbow. They're rolling through, just doing enough to keep the momentum of this group, but also holding back a little bit to make sure they can follow some moves and also think of attacking themselves as well. So this is pretty nervous. Every single one of these riders now will have that feeling, that little knot in the bottom of their stomach here. But I think the biggest pressure now is on the men in yellow. And I think the weakest of the two I've done it, haven't I? Apologies. Team Visma Lease bike riders is Benoot. He's the one that seems to have struggled a little bit on there. So I think the pressure is on Jorgensen here to try and win this one.
6, that's all that remained. So you're going to finish 6th. You don't want to finish 6th. You want a top 5. Do you want a podium? Do you want to take the day? What are you capable of? They'll be asking themselves this question. Jonas Abramson has to give a turn. It's been a while for the 28-year-old. Stage winner on the Tour de France. Can he possibly? Well, he's never going to have an opportunity, one wouldn't have thought, to do what he's got a chance of doing today. Sometimes you get surprises, and we might have one today. Frankly, if any of them won today, you'd just have to do nothing else other than applaud. But it's a story still to be told. They are all knocking this back just a little bit. They've got something of a cushion. It's about a minute and a half to the Jonathan Milan, Casper Pedersen, Norsgaard Matthews group. It's a big group, lots of names. Well, we've only got 6 up front, and so they're moderating their pace because they're all thinking about how this can be. It's a tough ask. If you are Stefan Kung, you'd think that now would be the time to actually just invoke the motor and go for it, but you're going to drag somebody along on your coattails. And Jonas Abramson, almost alive to that threat, comes up alongside Kung and just says, hello, everything all right? Don't start thinking about going long, because I'll just go with you and then I'll beat you in the sprint. This is just poker play par excellence, and it may well be that this gap absolutely tumbles. I hope they don't get it wrong and get caught, Matt.
Yeah, they can afford to play a little bit, but not too much. You know, they've still got to go through Nokera up that little climb, and if there's real cohesion behind and they knock it off dramatically, the gap could shut down. But with 11 k's to go, we've got De Bont just watching, waiting at the front. He's got a right to do that. It looks like that was going to be a little bit of a move there. So Tish Benoot, I was going to suggest that if Team Visma Lease might want to win this one, they've almost got to play the Benoot foil, fire Benoot up the road, go from the back, force the others to chase. And what they will do is look at themselves for a while. But I think the man that's going to have to do the chasing is Stefan Kung. And if Kung chases, then Jorgensen goes straight over the top of that one. As we look at the group, I think this is the Volgren group.
Yep.
This is actually Group 2 on the road, so the group with Milan are even further back.
They are. I'm afraid that looks like curtains for them. Whether they collect this group or not, I do not know. It's such a sad thing to see that Alberto Bettiol is not here. I think it was an injury that he got on that big kick on the cobbles. Maybe just strained a calf. Can't know for sure, and we won't until the end. Indeed, possibly quite a while. Let's wait and see. And we'll catch up with all of the injuries, of which we've had too many today. Let's dwell on the joy of it, shall we? Minute 21 to that second group, but it's all about this group of riders that we're looking at right now. There is Tish Benoot. He's not in that 4 position just for the time being. That's Josh Tarling next to him, who bridged over himself brilliantly, so changed the tempo and in fact timed that bridge absolutely perfectly from the main peloton that still survived after the incident, which is the only way to describe it, quite frankly. It's taken out too many big names, including Wout van Aert. If you are only just joining us, he is unlikely to be racing Flanders at the weekend. It looked brutal. Here's a kickoff. Tish Benoot has gone, and guess who's following him? Tarling. Has anyone else got the capability to do so? Well, that's the first dangle of bait here, and who's going to take it? Tarling has gone to rest in with Benoot. You're absolutely right. Now, how much of a threat is this? Suddenly can't hold on any longer. Dries de Bont goes through. Now, Tarling will need to build up some slip room here onto this climb. It's the last climb of the race. That's what this is about. He knows that he's not the best climber here, but he doesn't want to spend too much time getting back on. So he's going to have a job to do a little bit later on. Stephen Kung now is being lent on by a man on a magic carpet ride. That's Matteo Jorgensen. And look at Abramson at the playing this absolutely cleverly, brilliantly so. He's not doing the bridging at all. He's getting the lift, if you will. He's had his thumb out, you might say, and thankfully say thanks for the ride. Coming up to that climb is now. How much of an insurance policy has Tarling built into this, Matt?
Well, he responded quickly. I thought they were going to have to throw Tiesj Benoot at it, and they did. And this has mean that, for me, the man in pole position now is Matteo Jorgensen. He's on. Think of how long that Stefan Kung has been in the wind. De Bont now latches onto the wheel of Tiesj Benoot. Tarling is drifting backwards, but he's certainly not out of it yet. He needed to get a little bit of an advance on this climb, and that's exactly what he's done. Still not out of the frame. He's going to be swept past at almost double the speed now. Tarling has got to find something to try and just drop into the slipstream of Abrahamsen over the top of the climb, but it's at the moment these two riders are still clear, but that's a good move. Just watch out for Jorgensen now. But you see how smart Abrahamsen is. He's dropped onto the wheel of the man in yellow there, so good riding by the Norwegian.
Absolutely fabulous. Amundsen is playing this like a demon. Charling's off the back. He built in some insurance into the climb. He's now, thankfully for him, dealt with the final climb. It's all over. However, he can get himself back on. He's got Pavé to deal with, and then it may well come down to his TTing abilities. Like no other. Kung knows about that, doesn't want him back in. So Kung it is that kicks on here as well. Himself a good time trialist. If you're a good time trialist, the last thing you need around you is another time trialist. So Kung is now at least first part of his job. Get rid of Tarling. He's now invoking the pace here, Matt.
He certainly is. It's a good move by Stefan Kung. You wonder if he was just feigning on that climb a little bit. He was a long time in the wind, or wanted to ride just below threshold, just keep them in sight and then go hard over the top, because it's put Tarling in a lot of difficulty. But what we've seen from Tarling today is remarkable tenacity. He will not give up. He's yo-yoed off the back on virtually every single climb, but has used that enormous engine to drag himself back into contention as this man goes again.
Yeah, he's kicking on. Kung looks back. That's Tarling. Let's see if he drives into it once more, and he does. He picks it back up, gives himself a moment's respite, sees Tarling, kicks on again, just has a few gulps of breath, and then invokes the pace once more, and Tarling's finding himself in a little bit of trouble here. 6.3 kilometres is our next Pavé section that they're going to hit into the light and shade, which this day has been absolutely full of. Indeed, a bit of darkness as well. It's now 5 up front with Tarling off the back at 7.7 kilometres to go, and the pace changes are raining through, and here it comes up and over the top. Tiesj Benoot goes through on his back wheel, goes Dries de Bont as well. That's clever riding. Where's Abramson? He doesn't want to miss out on a moment such as this. Dries de Bont has been up the front all day, settles in, and here is Abramson. No other choice, I don't think, than to go for it. No. And this is Kung that just tries to close that gap. No help whatsoever. It's the old 1-2 raining down upon everybody from Visma Lease Bike. Having a teammate with you in a moment such as this is great, but any diminution in pace, and it's going to be closed down by Tarling, who gets himself back in. Absolutely brilliant.
This is a brilliant race. It's so tactically finely balanced, and Tarling again, all he can do is just hope that they ease a little bit so he can get into that bleed stretch. And Jorgensen's gone. That's a big move by Jorgensen.
Big one. Might be a winning move. 7 to go. This is fantastic. He's going to hit the Pavé first. Tarling comes round and says, almost catches the back wheel there of de Bont, and they can't decide who to go for. Tarling's not going to give Kung a turn here, and we've got a bird that's flown, and look at him. That's a gap with 6.8 to go, and it's a gap that can stick. Matteo Jorgensen from the United States has kicked on here. This is brilliant, Matt.
Yeah, it's a good move. It's a good move by Tiesj Benoot to go. It's all about doing Tiesj Benoot, getting him up the road first. Not ideal that he was with Dries de Bont, but he's gone. And there was a real acceleration. Every time he doesn't just float off the front. He's actually got a lot of snap, a lot of punch. And is so versatile. Winner of Paris-Nice already this year. Such an interesting programme leading into the Tour. And we know how much potential he had. He showed that last year. But this is a legitimate opportunity for the young American to take his first Cobble Classic. 6.2 Ks to go as he thunders over the cobbles, Carlton.
It is. I firmly believe it. 6.1 kilometres to go. Just invoking the chase is Dries de Bont here. Can't get it going. Just on his back wheel is Chase Benoot, or trying to get there. Tarling still doggedly determined to stay with this one. Stefan Kung has beaten Tarling up, essentially. They've beaten each other up, staring each other into the abyss, you might say. They can't offer turns to each other. One's absolutely helped himself, and it's Jorgensen who's flown the coop here for the United States. Those of you watching it on Max, you must be absolutely delighted, and I'm not surprised. 5.7 kilometres of the day remaining. 12 seconds is the gap that Jorgensen has posted, and it looks solid, Matt, with this distance remaining.
It certainly does. We've got Josh Tarling has just driven right through to the front, but Tish Benoot locked onto his back wheel, and it does feel to me as if the rest of the riders behind have conceded that this man is going to take the victory today. He's flying, isn't he? Number 4 on his back. 11 seconds is the lead with 5.4 seconds to go. He looks behind. He'll see daylight. Rounds the corner, takes a gulp of air, and will be soon back on the power again. That was a good move. It just shows how important it is, Carlton, in the back end of a big race like this, to have numbers up in front. Tish Benoot has played his part. I cannot see the American now being caught.
Teammates, if you've got one, it's like gold. 14 seconds now. He's extending the margin. 5.1 kilometres from home. And I think we have our winner, finally. Mind you, we were saying that about Alberto Bettiol when he went on the attack and he got himself injured. One thing is for certain, you cannot take anything for granted here, but one thing we must grant is that this is a huge move from Jorgensen. This is Kung trying to close it down. Once again, Tarling just off the back. No more pavé or indeed mountains to climb. There's the 5K to go marker. So 300 metres is the gap only, and it accounts for 19 seconds. Pace is off here, and they're thinking about minor places. This is that little jink and dive, thinking, you know what, a podium on a day like this is possibly a pretty good result. It's not a win, though, is it? And this man is heading right there. What a ride. And chapeau to him, Matt. This is amazing.
Yeah, this is absolutely superb. He is. I think this man is one of the most exciting riders on the planet right now. He's got a wonderful demeanour. He's bright. He's intelligent. He wants to learn, and he's still relatively young. You know, spent a couple of years with Movistar. Was touted as one of the next big things. He's come to Visma Lease Bike, and he's taken on a new leaf of life. I think this team is allowing him to flourish and fulfil his potential. Do you know what? Going to tip it now. This has got to be a man for the Grand Tours in the future. There's that attack, but really crisp as well. There was nothing laboured about that at all. You know, there was nothing.
Look at the default.
Round. Yeah, that's it.
They just cannot organise themselves. And no surprise, Matt, it's a mental thing apart from anything else, a physical thing naturally because of the pace that the day has been taken at. It's been absolutely relentless, hasn't it? They've got nothing left.
Yeah, they're tired, and also de Bont and remember Abrahamson as well. They've been in front all day. Stefan Kung has done what he can. It's been a great ride. Tarling kind of telegraphed that one a little bit. Straight on the wheel is Tish Benoot, but this man's never been in a position like this before. Ineos and his family can be very proud of the way that Josh Tarling has ridden today. Uncharted territory.
Cuts to the right. He said, well, if you're going to have a go, I'll have a go as well. And Tarling watches Kung go. He's going to try and get back onto this, what will be a quintet of chasers. But I'm afraid the man who's going to win the day is off and up the road. He's got a margin of over half a minute, and Tarling can't quite hold the wheel just for now. This man's holding the world in his hands, it seems. Matteo Jorgensen from this magnificent team Visma Lease Bike, and he is just sailing it home. 3 kilometres to go. He's not going to cede 30 seconds. He just needs to take care, Matt. He's done the hard work, and here it was.
Yep, there's the move again from the front, straight out of the wheel after his teammate had been away. Straight into that TT mode. Super aerodynamic. There it is again. We're getting multiple angles of that attack, but look, high leg speed out of the saddle, straight back into that efficient position, and nobody could do anything about it. But look at this man. Abrahamson has now gone clear.
Abrahamson tries to ping off. 2.7 kilometres to go. I don't know how much strength he's got left in his legs, but closing a gap of 34 seconds is too big an ask, surely, at this distance. But Jonas Abrahamson, all credit to the Norwegian, is just tired of the group, quite frankly. He's having a look round. He's saved his energy brilliantly today, considering he's been up the road for most of the day. He's hidden in full view, I think it's fair to say, within that group. But this man, Matteo Jorgensen, is heading for a big one. Well, dwars may not be the biggest of your classics, but it's an important one. It's a bridge to Flanders, and it's a bridge too far, I'm afraid, for some others, and it looks like Josh Tarling has to be included in that vanguard. Leaving it behind him is Jonas Abrahamsson. So if these are podium places that are up for grabs right now, it looks like the Norwegian is making a big claim. 2Ks to go. Matteo Jorgensen's going to bring this home, Matt.
Yeah, he's looking good, and he looks so smooth. A little bit of rocking from his upper body, but he's absolutely dialed on that bike. He is super stylish, calm. You know, he's showed so much potential in the classics, and it just shows how deep this Visma Lease bike team is. They've already won Omloop, they've won Kuurne, and now it looks as if, barring a disaster, they're going to take Dwars Vlaanderen as well. Super riding, great team. I mean, great team riding as well. But I'm so impressed by the riding of this Norwegian rider who's just clipped off the front. They can't quite decide.
He's decided if there's podium up for grabs, I'd like 2 yellows on there, maybe 1 and 2. And so Thijs Benoot it is that sets off. Going with him is Stefan Kung. I think now this is Benoot allowing himself the possibility of finishing second. He's played the perfect team role today. And Matteo Jorgensen's going to bring it in, so he can afford to chase into the gap, if you will, Thijs Benoot, and maybe put himself into a famous 1-2 for Visma Lease bike. And boy, do they need that as a balm. I'm sure the first thoughts of Matteo Jorgensen today are going to be for Wout van Aert, one of those who unfortunately took such a big hit today in a huge crash amongst the favourites. He'll be thinking of him, Matt, that's for sure.
Yeah, he certainly will. Difficult situation. There was that moment in the race, there was that hesitation, wondering what they needed to do, but they just got stuck in back to the bike racing, and it looks as if the man from Boise in Idaho is going to take the win. And look at this, Thijs Benoot is determined to try and salvage something else, not just satisfied with the top step of the podium. He brings back the man from Norway, but now the last few hundred metres for this man are going to be a pure joy.
No sprint required, and the smiles are already there, and this is going to feel like the easiest end to a race for this man, because the joy of it, quite frankly, is going to wash over him. It's already happening. He's smiling. He's into the hoarded sections. 300 metres to go, and he can think about how to celebrate. The time doesn't matter. It's the drive that counts, and this is going to be a big gap back to some huge names. He can think about how to do this. How do I celebrate? He says, just ride it in, my friend, and enjoy. Because Matteo Jorgensen has just won the Dwars Vlaanderen, the preamble to Flanders itself. That's a big result for a big guy. Fabulous. And now the clock doth roll, and it's who is going to get runners-up spot. And to be frank, there's a couple here who've been out front all day. Abrahamsson has regathered himself. He goes over to the hoarded section. On his wheel here is Stefan Kung. They're not done just yet. Thijs Benoot is still in the chase, but at the back of this quartet, it's going to be third place for Kung, I think, as Abrahamsson's going to bring this one home. And chapeau to him as well for doggedly determining the day, I think, from so many different angles. He was out there right from the start. But all hail Matteo Jorgensen. Cue the Star-Spangled Banner. And a few little bits of stardust as well to fall upon this man, Josh Tarling, who comes across the line. All credit to him as well. A mixed day of emotions for Visma Lease bike. And there they are. They congratulate each other, but they know their leader was fallen as well.
God, that was a tired hug, wasn't it? They're absolutely nailed, aren't they, Carl?
Well, they're thinking about racing, aren't they?
Exactly. It's a slightly different. It's going to be tinged with a little bit of sadness. They're going to be worried about their teammate, of course. Hopefully, they'd have been given some information about Wout van Aert's condition. But it may be a bittersweet win, but the victory is with the team. Massively important for them, and this is the battle now for the minor placing. Still some slots inside the top 10 for this group behind contending, and Michael Volgren leaning into the corner with Milan on his wheel.
Volgren picks this up, and Milan did make the trip, and it could have well been all about Jonathan Milan at the end of the day. Somebody who climbs exponentially well. In fact, has bridged over from the peloton to be part of this, our concerns. Minute and 47 for Milan as he leads them in with Kasper Pedersen and Matthias Norsgaard on board as well. And yes, a case of what might have been for so many. And here they come, the hordes, but The day is already over. This race was won over 2 minutes ago by Matteo Jorgensen. All credit to those who are still fighting position. There was, as you saw, was Michael Matthews, unfortunately caught out. Corbin Strong also part of that group, but my goodness, what a day. Well, in more ways than one, we remember the fallen, not only historically, of course, but those who took a tumble out of today's race, and we wish them the very best indeed, dealing with their traumas and injuries, which must surely have come. So an American bringing it home today as we dwell on this American cemetery as well. The Dwars of Vlaanderen has been royally entertaining, and we thank you for your company. Matt, a day of mixed emotions, but a great winner nonetheless.
Yeah, we had a brilliant race. We know that crashing is part and parcel of pro cycling, but to have such a large catastrophic crash with some of the big stars was always a massive disappointment, and I think it's without a shadow of a doubt has tainted the race to a degree. I mean, you can't deny that, and I think everybody will agree. But still, the race that we saw at the sharp end was super exciting. Matteo Jorgensen, I think, when you look at how he's been riding over the last couple of seasons, this victory actually feels right, despite the loss of Wout van Aert, the crash of Sturven and Pedersen and the rest. It still feels to me as if this victory was a long time coming. This big first one-day win, and of course off the back of Paris-Nice. So it's a fitting victory, I think, for Matteo Jorgensen, who's clearly in great form. So despite the fact that they've had crashes, they can still reconfigure. Again, it's just another example of how deep in strength Visma Lease Bike are.
Here he is.
Matteo Jorgensen, many congratulations. You win a Flemish Classic. We could see that it was really a joy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It really is. This whole season has been a dream so far. Yeah, it's surreal actually.
Must have been very important that you were the two of you and Tish, in that reading group at the end.
Yeah, very important. As a team, our whole strategy is based around having numbers in the final. So, yeah, there was a moment there on one of the last cobble sections where Stefan Kung was going in the gutter, and yeah, Tej was just a little bit gapped, and yeah, thankfully I waited for him because I think without him I wouldn't have won this race.
Of course, there was this terrible crash with Wout and the other big guys involved. Did you witness what happened there? Did you see what happened there?
Yes, I was on Wout's wheel at the time, actually. Just before the Canarieberg, it was obviously a decisive moment in the race, and yeah, it was just a racing incident. We had two lead-out trains trekking us, and yeah, basically we came together, and Wout and I think Alex Kirsch came together, and it was a really ugly fall. I saw the whole thing, and I knew that Wout was going to be out of the race at that point. We were going so fast, so Tej and I continued with the plan because, yeah, there's still a bike race, but yeah, my thoughts are with Wout and the rest of the guys involved.
All those things together, your excellent performance today, it may be that you're the man for this next Sunday to be the leader from Visma Lease Bike in the Tour of Flanders.
I hope that's not the case. I hope everyone's good, and yeah, I will assess that later.
We know Wout is in the hospital right now. You haven't heard anything yet. I guess it's too early days.
Yeah, I have no news. Just in the radio after the finish, they told me that Wout was in the hospital. So yeah, my thoughts are with Wout, and yeah, I really hope he's okay.
In the final stretch, we could see some disbelief in your face that you win this race as well after Paris-Nice. This is a dream, living the dream.
Yeah, I after Paris-Nice refocused a bit because I still didn't have an auto qualification for the Olympics, and that's a big goal for me to make it to the Olympics. So now I have that in the pocket, and yeah, it's been an insane season. I really can't believe it.
Matteo Jorgensen, many congratulations. Great race, thank you.
Thank you.
And we add heartfelt congratulations and warmth to Matteo Jorgensen. He is such a lovely guy, full of humbleness, wants to be an Olympian, got that chance, and today, well, he medalled out, didn't he? Brilliantly. That was a classy piece of riding and an amazing champion we have. Matthew Jorgensen, strongest climber in the field. He can punch like hell, and it was the knockout blow from a quality group up front. He held his nerve, he kept his strategy where it needed to be, he rode brilliantly, and he won. This is how it shaped up at the beginning of the day. It was absolutely relentless. We finally got ourselves a high-quality breakaway group. We weren't at that point in the belief that they would make it all the way. And the pressure was kept on. Lidl Trek, Mads Pedersen calling for pace, and with so many potential winners within Lidl Trek, it was always going to be their race, we thought, to lose. In the end, unfortunately, it wasn't just the climbs and the pavé that were the problem. It was other riders. A sequence of sprints into the obstacles of the day caused bunching together. And then, of course, the splits in the crosswind, panic, nervousness, and watch this. A quality group of maybe 30 riders, including the favourites, cast asunder. Mads Pedersen on the deck. Jesper Stuyven, one of those who had to be taken to hospital. Wout van Aert himself, likewise. Biniam Girmay. It was a huge list of talent. Unfortunately, just hobbled before our very eyes. Well, without them, everything had to be recalibrated. Mathieu Jorgensen and Thijs Benoot raced on, knowing that Wout van Aert had fallen directly in front of Mathieu Jorgensen. Jesper Stuyven resting still. Nothing anyone ever wants to see. And the hospital beckoning for Wout van Aert. Disappointment and pain washing over him. Meanwhile, this group out front, including Alberto Bettiol, one of the favourites of the day. He and Michael Valgren in a group that swelled with the inclusion of Josh Tarling, who time-trialled his way over from Ineos Grenadiers. Well, there was still the original breakaway, or the remnants of it, up the road, including Abramson, who'd ridden so strongly. They were about to be joined by the quality chasers, including Bettiol, who looked nailed-on favourite for the day. When they came together, it looked handy. They couldn't all work together, too many different kinds of riders, and indeed behind there was Milan, and Matthews wanted to be part of the frame. With 38 kilometres to go, it was too big a task. Some shakes of head, and indeed that front group started to just whittle down. When would the attack come within this group? And we thought it was going to be from Bettiol. So it proved. Unfortunately for him, too much of a strain on the cobbles. This was a big moment for Bettiol in more ways than one. We thought he'd broken the back of those who were out front, and he just folded himself into one corner after another until all of a sudden, to the side of the road he went. Injury, we understand, and what a shame. No sign of punctures, hanging a leg, trying to shake out a strain. It just wasn't to be. And so it was that we had a group of favourites up front, and we had to guess then who it might be to take on the day. Thijs Benoot was playing a marvel, great role as a foil to Mathieu Jorgensen. Never that far apart, each waiting for the other. And when Kung decided he wanted Josh Tarling out of the frame, if this was going to be a time trialist day, straight on the back wheel was Mathieu Jorgensen. Well, Jorgensen, of course, with Paris-Nice already in the back of his mind, and maybe, who knows, what else? Sky's the limit for this man. And indeed some clear air he wanted between himself and everybody else within this group. 6 kilometres to go. The last section of cobbles went his way, and so did the victory. A spectacular piece of clever riding in appalling circumstances, made for a very bittersweet day for Visma Lease Bike. Abramson had been in the break all day, getting himself a creditable finish as well. And the names, the big names, just kept rolling over the line. But the gap was huge, and one man had posted it. Mathieu Jorgensen has won the Dwars of Vlaanderen and may well be elevated in terms of favoured status when it comes to Flanders itself on Sunday.
Yeah, mean, that was a cathartic release of joy, wasn't it, from Matteo Jorgensen? And that big smile, I mean, just shows how much it means to him. And he's a really interesting rider, isn't it? I do think in the future, we touched on it when he went clear, that, you know, I can see this man being a contender for a Grand Tour in the future. He's one of the most versatile riders out there. He really has got it all. Exciting, balanced, respectful, intelligent, just a great bike rider. He really is.
That's how they finished. 29-second margin, and Jonathan Milan coming home as part of that group, which essentially was the peloton. We're going to hear from Tish Benoot. Very much part of the success for Matteo Jorgensen.
Tish, well, congratulations on that win. Tell us a bit, take us through back to the race. You were in numbers, then you lost Voigt. Take us through a bit that moment.
Our plan was to go on the Canarieberg. And Tim van Dijken, the brothers van Dijken were doing a great lead out actually towards the climb, and then I think Tim was finished leading us out, and on the left side they were passing us, so Wout shouted at me to accelerate, which I did, but I think while I was standing up he touched my wheel in the back. I feel really shit about it actually. I hope he's doing okay. I don't know anything about it. And I was actually a bit, how we say it, confused afterwards. But Matteo still went on the climb, which was, in the end, a good decision. I think we played it out well with 2 in the final. Personally, I'm happy with my feeling after a hard crash on Friday. It's already much better than in Gentweil again, but yeah, really disappointed for what happened to Wout actually.
Well, if proof were needed, Matt, it's a team game, and first thoughts are for those who've been left on the road.
Yeah, it was, you could see Tish was really quite upset there, and as we talked about in the race, was kind of torn with what they do next, but they had a race to go on with, and they had to follow, and they finished it off. But yeah, he would have been torn at that point, and clearly now is disappointed and upset, which is more than understandable.
Don't forget, this was your entree ahead of the Tour of Flanders. We cannot wait. Sunday, 09:45 Central European Time. We'll be picking it up. Don't forget, there is a pre-show as well for you to enjoy. 270.8 kilometres. And if anything, Dwars of Vlaanderen was maybe a taste of things to come. Let's hope it's not quite so bitter for those indeed who are taking part. We're going to be there. Trust you will be too. It will be a spectacular day, because it always is. Well, those of you watching on digital, it's going to take quite a while for everyone to come home. Some, of course, never did, we remind ourselves. Dwars of Vlaanderen. If this is a taste of things to come, then every flavour you can possibly enjoy or endure when it comes to Flanders itself. It's been a rough day today. It's also been a joyous one. It's almost a distillation of what cycling is all about, and unfortunately, what it can be on occasion. Great winner. Take nothing away from Matteo Jorgensen. We'll take our leave and indeed enjoy Flanders in your company on Sunday. We're going to hear from Stefan Kung next, as those of you who are staying with us on Linear enjoy a few little extra tidbits from the Dwars of Vlaanderen.
Stefan Kung, congratulations on that podium spot. Was that the maximum today?
I think the maximum would have been second place because, yeah, in the end, Visma had the numbers and they played it well. And I mean, I was probably, yeah, the strongest apart from them, and so yeah, it was impossible for me to win this race actually, because in the end they were both really strong riders and they played it well. So yeah, when there's 2 against 1 and all the others are just looking at me because they're on the limit, then it's really difficult.
Of course, there was the already infamous crash in the run-up to the Canarieberg. What was your take on it? What did you experience in that particular phase?
Yeah, it was a bit hectic before, and I was alone. I didn't have a teammate there, so I just moved up actually, and afterwards I hear the crash in my at the back of me, and then at the first moment, like I think everyone was a bit shocked, and then Matteo reopened the race, and then we rode away, but because he went really fast.
In the first comments, there's already talk about not having that descent ever again. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I read that they took it out of Tour of Flanders because there was a crash there last year already. Honestly, like there is a few spots like this also when we come down from Hotond to the approach of Trieux. It's the same thing. And today I was a bit in the back, and I was also like, sometimes it just crosses your mind for a second, like, wow, because some guys were like on the right-hand side in the gutter, and it doesn't, there's a touch of wheels, or it can go so quick. Like I would say normally like 9 times out of 10, it's okay. I did these races for 10 years now, and on the Canarieberg, it's only in the last 2 years that I remember like such big crashes. But yeah, if it's hard to avoid, you know. I mean, there's always going to be a big road, and when we ride on small road, then it's dangerous also. Unfortunately, it's part of cycling, but it's not a part that we want to see.
Podium spot today. Do you consider yourself a podium contender for next Sunday's race?
Yeah, I think so, because for me, normally the cobble climbs suit me even better, and I also feel like I'm getting better and better from race to race. Idria is already quite good. In Ghent, I was missing a little bit there on the first time camel, but today it was the best I felt from all these races. So it's positive towards the Tour of Flanders, and I also hope that we're going to be there with a strong team. Like normally we have 3 cars to play with Laurent, Valentin and myself. And yeah, then we have to try and do something.
Thank you, and good luck in the next races.
Nice to hear he backs himself. I didn't think the crash was on a descent, Matt. They're dwelling on that a lot.
It was on the from the aerial shot. It's just it's a long downhill drag. It's not. I wouldn't really call it. I mean, it was slightly dangerous. I mean, it is an interesting one. I know that I'm just reading that they have actually taken it out of the Tour of Flanders, that descent, but I don't know. It's a difficult one, like he said. He's very eloquent there and balanced in what he said. It's always unfortunate. I think it's more the issue that it leads into such a small pinch point. So rather than just descend it and then it's out of the way, it's that point leads into somewhere else. So the actual descent itself is far more chaotic. But again, it was just a touch of wheels. It was relatively innocuous. It was just that they were travelling 60 k's an hour plus. So I don't think it was an overly dangerous section of road. It just can be made dangerous if the's a touch of wheels, you know.
And also, as
it
you
was
say,
quite a reduced group of that. Exactly. And at that point, it was actually quite reduced. There was only about 35, 40 riders in that group. It's always a difficult one, but you know, we always, the safety issue of the sport always needs to be looked at. You can never take your foot off the gas, never take things for granted, but yeah, it's a difficult one. But no, he's in good form and he's gradually building that towards Flanders, and as you said, he definitely backs himself.
Here's the man who's runner-up in the break all day, Abramson.
Jonas Abramson, many congratulations, runner-up in the dwars Tour Vlaanderen. Out of the breakaway, do you surprise yourself?
Yes, I've been a lot in the breakaway this year, so I'm very happy to get a podium. I was close in Treno Adriatico, was second again with 50 meter. Today I'm very happy with the podium.
could he have won this race? Because everything seemed possible with the 6 leaders at the end.
Yes, everything is possible, but Jumbo was very, very strong there with 2 guys in the end, and they was attacking a lot. So I'm very happy with podium with so strong guys in the end there.
Where are your limits in the future? Because if you end on the podium in a semi-classic like this, then usually that creates expectations.
Yes, maybe it's not so easy to go in the breakaway anymore, but I feel this last year, since before Tour de France 1 year ago, before that I have mono, and after I take a long break, and after that I have been much better. And it's nice to see that I can get a podium in a World Tour race.
That's so true. Many congratulations, Jonas Abrams.
In the break all day, said it might be more difficult for him to get up the road in the future, and I wouldn't be surprised. That was a great effort.
Oh, that's a super hard day out, and look at the distance he's put in the sprint there. Had it all been together and in a different scenario, if Jorgensen hadn't been clear, it looks like he might have won this, but that wasn't to be. They had the numbers, but to survive and manage to clip off like he did, because he attacked on a couple of occasions before actually winning the sprint, didn't he? He's clearly good legs to be out in front all day long, and the same could be said of Dries de Bont as well. Both of the riders surviving the breakaway and still being protagonists. They've got to be very, very happy.
Sevan Kung making up the podium. In fact, we're about to see it right now.
Go down this time, you know. It's all has to be like.
They're still talking about that high-speed descent, which led to another climb.
Op de 2e plaats geëindigd. Een man van wie we in de toekomst nog heel veel gaan horen. Dat heeft hij vandaag bewezen. Heeft alles in zich om een klassiek toprenner te worden. Komt daar naar Noorwegen. Rijdt voor UX Mobility. Uw applaus voor Jonas Abrahamsen.
Every single one of these steps on the podium, well fought for.
En de winnaar van vandaag.
But there can only be one winner, and this is your man.
In deze editie van Dwars door Vlaanderen rijdt voor team Visma Leasebike Conrad de USA. Uw overwinningsapplaus voor Matteo Jorgensen.
Great that they won it. They came here, of course, with Wout van Aert amongst the favourites. But Matteo Jorgensen was a great card to play. He was also up there. If you had a list of 20 riders with a possibility, then he was certainly high up on that list, Matt.
Yeah, he certainly was. You know, they've got such a strong team, and to reconfigure in the way they did and still take the race on, it just shows the measure of the man as well. But yeah, let's all again reiterate the fact that let's hope that everyone in that crash is okay, and hopefully they can all be riding at the weekend, but that remains to be seen.
Voor de winnaar van vandaag namens Proximus nodig ik heel graag de heer Ben van der Meulen uit voor de bloemen uit te reiken aan de nummer 1, de winnaar van Dwars door Vlaanderen 2024.
He cut his mic off. He had several goes. It's like his Wheels of Steel disco, isn't it? He's got a good record collection, but a lousy mic. Nonetheless, you know his name. He tried to say it several times, but Matteo Jorgensen has won. He got there in the end. And what has he won? Is it an antler? No.
It's a nice trophy. It's a very nice trophy.
It is. There we are.
It's quite like bronze sculpture. That's quite nice, that is.
There's a whiff of the Botero about it. Anyway, there is your man. He gets a horse. He wants a flan and a beer if it's to be proper.
And then guys, it's time for champagne. We gaan de champagne laten uitreiken aan de winnaar.
Oh, the horse has had some beer already, but looks a bit. There we go.
KBC uitgereikt worden door de heer Tom de Rauw. En de flessen voor Stefan Kung en de fles ook voor Jonas Abraham.
It's all right, he says. We've taken the cage off. No, we haven't actually.
Now it's time for champagne, guys.
Yeah, just be careful.
De kurken
Exactly.
de champagne. Die gaan we in het rond zien vliegen.
There we go. Well done.
Feestelijk moment na deze editie van Dwars door Vlaanderen. De kurken gaan eraf.
Can't get the cork off. Oh, there we go. Good lad.
Got there in the end. And poor old Dobbin is going to need a dry clean. Well, they're clinking them. And we remind you that the women's race is also raging on at the moment on digital, if you'd like to catch up with that. If you don't know how the race is, if you don't want to know how the race is standing at the moment, it's about 35 kilometres to go. Just avert your eyes for the time being.